Chapter 1, The Letter, the Owl, and the Awakening. July 21, 1991 early morning, South Kensington, London. At 101 Garden Street stood a grand three-story villa, its tall doors and pointed rooftop cutting a proud silhouette against the London morning. A white picket fence circled the front garden, lending the home a dignified calm. This wasn't just any home, it belonged in South Kensington, a place where only the upper crust of the middle class could afford to live. Lawyers, dentists, anesthesiologists. The respectable elite. But even in this prestigious neighborhood, number 101 drew special attention. The property was nearly double the size of its neighbors, complete with a spacious backyard. And inside, in the plush living room, sat the villa's master Alex Gaunt, locked in a silent staring contest with a round-faced Scottish owl that looked particularly displeased. A minute later, the chubby owl gave an annoyed flutter, dropped the letter it had clutched in its talons, and flew off in a huff. Before leaving, it left a parting gift on Alex's floor, a petty protest against the man's refusal to offer any food. Alex barely glanced at the mess. His focus was on the envelope in his hand. 101 Garden Street, in your stately drawing room, Mr. Alex Gaunt. His hands trembled slightly as he read the text aloud. Pale yellow parchment. An insignia marked with a lion, a snake, a badger, and a raven. Could the hint be any more obvious? A deep swirl of emotion coiled inside him. He had thought, until this moment, that he'd simply been reborn into the mundane world of 1980s London. But no. This was the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Hogwarts. Hermione. Luna. Fleur. No, that wasn't the point. He wasn't here to meet characters from a story. The point was magic. Alex had been a regular reincarnator, a workaholic in his past life, victim of the 9-to-9 grind. He'd literally worked himself to death, and when he opened his eyes again, he was in the body of a young orphan boy in 1980s England. Classic protagonist material. He thought a system would awaken, that he'd conquer the world with cheats and hacks. But 11 years had passed. No system. No miracles. Just a sharper mind, stronger memory, and a few peculiar mental abilities that came with his rebirth. But those alone had been enough. With a touch of financial know-how from his past life, he'd quietly started an investment firm with the orphanage director fronting the paperwork and made a fortune. Every year he donated a slice of his earnings back to the orphanage, but he still kept tens of thousands of pounds for himself. 2 years ago, he'd bought this house and moved in alone. He'd thought this life would stay simple. Wait for the dot-com bubble, scoop up some cash, then ride the crypto wave. Easy money. Quiet life. But this changed everything. Magic was real. His heart thudded with a chaotic blend of awe and dread. He wasn't a die-hard Harry Potter fan, but he'd seen all the films. He knew the general flow of the story. And one thing was certain, this world was anything but peaceful. It was 1991. He was going to Hogwarts the same year as Harry Potter. From year 1 to year 4, he could probably coast under the radar, live his life without getting entangled with Dumbledore or the so-called Golden Trio. After all, most of the trouble in those years had been either Harry's own fault or Dumbledore playing puppet master behind the scenes. But in year 5, Umbridge would come. And from then on, things would spiral. By years 6 and 7, Hogwarts would basically be a war zone, Voldemort's territory. Scratch that, the entire magical world would be a war zone. Still, how could he not be drawn to magic? Even back when he'd watched the movies, he'd been captivated by the wonder of it all. Now he was actually here. Would it be so bad to study magic up until 5th year? Pass the O.W.L.S. and then disappear somewhere to live off the grid? Lost in thought, Alex finally broke the seal and opened the envelope. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot, Supreme Mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, Order of Merlin, First Class. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Due to special circumstances, a professor will visit your residence on July 31st to provide further explanation. Deputy Headmistress Minerva McGonagall. Just as he finished reading, a soft ding echoed through his mind. Ding! Host has come into contact with this world's supernatural system. Scanning world. Another ding. Scan complete. Calibrating custom system based on world laws. System calibration complete. Magic summon system is now online. Welcome to the Magic Summon system. This system is non-sentient and offers no analysis or feedback. It carries no penalties and is safe to use. Alex twitched. So that's why his system hadn't shown up. It was waiting for him to touch the true core of this world. He'd been living like a muggle this whole time, never awakening the magic around him. Well, now it was here. As long as he didn't get reckless, Hogwarts shouldn't be too dangerous. System, Alex said aloud, lips curling into a sly smile. Introduce yourself. And since you're so late, I expect compensation. I want my newbie package now. He'd spent enough time in online web novels in his past life to know how to milk a system dry. When it came to squeezing perks out of magical cheat systems, he was practically on Dumbledore's level. Ding! System has been dormant for 11 years. Stored energy will be split 50/50ths with host. Awarding 5,000 gold coins to host. Distributing newbie package. Open now. Yes. Open it. Opening package. Congratulations. You've gained a bloodline awakening opportunity. Wizard Spirit bloodline activated. In the blink of an eye, Alex felt like a volcano had erupted inside his body. Heat surged through his veins, overwhelming and wild, and then it settled into a quiet flow. He focused inward. Where before he could only faintly sense his superpowers, which were actually just trickles of magic, now the magic coursed through him like a small stream. Calmer. More controlled. More his. He was satisfied. In every world, bloodlines were precious. Any advantage granted by blood, even in magical fiction, was never something to scoff at. There was a reason every fantasy protagonist had dragon blood or some ancient lineage. With this, he'd be able to learn self-defense far quicker. System, he asked again, what do I do with the gold coins? Sure, it had split the stored energy 50/50ths like a crooked landlord, but the starter gift wasn't bad. He'd let that slide. For now. Chapter 2, the system, the cards, and the golden draw. Gold coins are the sole currency of this system, came the system's mechanical reply. Considering most transmigrators are orphans and dirt poor, we have graciously removed any top-up functions. All coins must be earned within the system. Well gee, thanks a lot, Alex muttered, deadpan. He was speechless. He finally had a system, his own wealth, a fresh start. This should have been a double dose of joy. But now? No in-app purchases. No pay to win. The joy of being a whale, gone. Still, he had no choice but to accept it. The system was here, and he'd have to play by its rules. After poking around the interface, he quickly realized that the core mechanic of this system was card draws. Gold coins to draw cards. Simple. Each draw cost 100 coins. Cards were split into 4 grades: white, blue, purple, and gold. White cards included basic spells, potion ingredients, and even galleons. Blue cards started to get spicy offensive and defensive spells like Expelliarmus or Levioso. Purple cards held rarer, more advanced magic, spells like Occlumency, Expecto Patronum, and Silent Storm, along with mastery in entire branches like potions or transfiguration. And gold cards? Those were the real deal character cards. Drawing one would allow you to absorb a person's knowledge, a spell, or even one of their innate magical talents. As for earning more gold, it wasn't hard. Hitting milestones could earn coins or card packs. And once he enrolled at Hogwarts, a daily task system would unlock 100 coins for completing simple missions. Plus, one free draw every day capped at purple cards though. No golds from freebies. Fair enough. System, do I have a personal profile panel or something? Alex asked. Generating host profile. Please wait. Host, Alex Gaunt. Age, 11. Birthday, October 31st, technically 12, but Hogwarts cutoff puts him with the 11-year-olds. Identity, Shadow founder of Gaunt Investments, recent graduate of Garden Elementary, incoming Hogwarts first year. Bloodline, Wizard Spirit, awakening will evolve with strength. Magic scale, 3. Magical items, none. Charms talent, 5, outstanding. Transfiguration talent, 3, mediocre. Divination talent, 0, absolute troll. Dark arts talent, 8, Azkaban material. Gold coins, 5,000. Alex stared. And blinked. 8 points in dark arts? He was starting to seriously reconsider going to Hogwarts at all. What if the Sorting Hat screamed Azkaban, the moment it touched his head? Wouldn't he be the first student in history to get tossed in prison during the ceremony? Host need not worry, the system reassured blandly. All numerical talents are invisible to others, including magical detection tools. Well, thank Merlin for that. He exhaled deeply, finally relaxing. No one would see his terrifying dark arts affinity unless he made it obvious. Still, 5,000 coins sat in his account, practically begging to be spent. He hadn't drawn cards in years. Phones were still bricks in this era, and mobile gacha games weren't a thing yet. Let's see how much luck I've been saving these past 11 years. He opened the summon screen. A glimmering pop-up appeared. The stars churn, and fate reveals itself. To celebrate successful system activation, the following legendary character pool is now open. Light and Dark Twin Kings: the White Wizard, Albus Dumbledore, and the First Dark Lord, Gellert Grindelwald. Draw either of the Twin Kings and receive the other as a bonus. Bonus applies only once. Afterward, legendary cards will appear randomly. 1 gold guaranteed every 50 draws. Alex whistled. Not bad, system. Not bad at all. 1 draw cost 100 coins. He had 5,000. Exactly 50 pulls. Perfectly lined up with the pity system. That had to be intentional. He splashed cold water on his face, rinsed his hands a few times like a ritual. System, burn all 5,000 coins. Let's do this. A radiant pentagram formed on the screen. 10 streaks of light shot out. 5 white. 3 blue. 2 purple. Congratulations, host. Received 100 galleons, white, dot. Congratulations, host. Received Bertie Bott's Every Flavor Beans Megapack, white, dot. Congratulations, host. Received spell, Lumos, white, dot. Congratulations, host. Received spell, Occlumency, purple, dot. Congratulations, host. Received rare potion, Inspiration Elixir, purple, dot. Not bad. Not bad at all. 100 galleons, more than enough for a year at Hogwarts. And that was just a white card. Coins wouldn't be a problem anymore. As for the spells, the moment he obtained one, the knowledge downloaded straight into his mind: incantation, wand movement, casting tone. Everything. Give him a wand right now, and he'd cast them like a seasoned third year. Then came the purple prizes. Occlumency absolutely essential. Even with a system protecting his core secret, his reincarnation, random thoughts, internal monologues, and snarky commentary were always at risk. Dumbledore and Snape were 2 very nosy Legilimens. He wasn't about to let them poke around. The other reward, the Inspiration Elixir, was a gem. Inspiration Elixir, created by ancient potions masters. After drinking, your brain enters a hyperactive state for 1 hour. Boosts creativity, intuition, and cognitive speed massively. A Swiss Army knife of a potion. Whether it was for researching magic, dueling, or just inventing new spells, it was pure gold. He tucked it away. With a thought, the potion and all other items disappeared into the system inventory, a basic function that stored everything he pulled. System. Keep drawing. He nodded to the screen. Another draw. More cards. And again. And again. Each 10 pull brought the usual mix. Purple cards popped up consistently. The system seemed to have a built-in floor. More basic spells. More potion ingredients. A few more galleons. But no golds. Not one. After 40 pulls, his face darkened. Don't tell him the system had rigged it. Was he cursed with garbage luck across lifetimes? A chief of the unlucky tribe even in death? He stared at the screen, eyes dead, soul shriveling when the final 10 pull burst onto the screen. Whoosh! 2 golds. 2 purples. 3 blues. 3 whites. The golden lights exploded out of the magic circle, blinding in their brilliance, outshining everything else. Alex's pupils shrank as the glow filled his vision. Then he jumped to his feet, shouting. Hell yes! Double gold drop! So he wasn't a cursed drawlord. He was a proper Brit. An official UK citizen. This was European luck. Chapter 3, 3 Kings, 1 Phoenix, and the Arrival of the Bat. Alex couldn't believe his eyes. After 40 lukewarm pulls, he thought he'd used up all his luck. But the final 10 pull had blessed him with not just 1 but 2 gold cards. With the newbie banners bonus, that made 3 legendary cards from 1 batch. He stared breathlessly at the golden glow as it faded, revealing the 3 radiant cards beneath. Name, Albus Dumbledore. Grade, Gold. Talents. Transfiguration, 8, History Maker. Dark Arts, 8, Born for Azkaban. Defense against the Dark Arts, 8, Ally of Justice. Spells. Majority of Dark Arts. All standard defensive spells. Advanced Transfiguration Techniques. Name, Phoenix, Pet Card. Grade, Gold. Gender, Female. Talent, Rebirth. Abilities, Healing Tears, Spell Consumption for Defense, Long-Range Communication, Apparition. Name, Gellert Grindelwald. Grade, Gold. Talents. Dark Arts, 8. Prophetic Animagus, only top 2 talents displayed. Spells. High-tier Dark Arts. Defensive Magic. Ancient Black Magic. Alex was stunned. The twin kings of magic Dumbledore and Grindelwald both landed in his lap. And to top it off, a phoenix, the literal symbol of magical authority in the wizarding world. He hadn't even stepped into Hogwarts yet, and he already had the endgame loot. The phoenix alone was legendary. With its apparition and message delivery abilities, he could literally vanish from Hogwarts anytime things got too hot. Still, the cards came with a caveat. For each gold card, he could only extract 1 ability, spell, or talent. With Dumbledore, the choice was obvious: defense against the dark arts. His current talent in that field was a modest 4, promising, but not exceptional. With Dumbledore's boost, he could reach 5 or even 6, putting him just beneath the realm of magical titans. Grindelwald, though, that was a tougher call. Should he double up on defense again, push that score to 6 and become practically unassailable? After all, even legends like Snape, Sirius Black, or James Potter probably sat around level 5 in their prime. But one glance at his own dark arts talent, already 8, made the decision for him. With Grindelwald's boost, he'd hit level 9. That was the system ceiling. To hell with it. I want to see what peak dark arts talent feels like. System, fuse Dumbledore's defense against the dark arts talent, and Grindelwald's dark arts talent. Ding! Talents fused. That was it. No transformation sequence? No thunder and lightning? Alex blinked. He didn't feel any different. But then again, talent was passive, it would only show when he began to learn and wield those arts. All right, summon the phoenix. A flash of fire burst before his eyes. The blaze twisted into a glowing ring, and from its center emerged a breathtaking creature, majestic, regal, its feathers radiating warmth and elegance. The phoenix landed gracefully on his shoulder, nuzzling his face affectionately with its golden beak. Alex gently stroked its feathers, a smile tugging at his lips. Dumbledore's phoenix is named Fox. Guess I need to give you a name too. How about Furry? Ying. He froze. What? Was that how phoenixes were supposed to sound? What was with the cute squeak? Was his phoenix a whimpering gremlin? Shaking his head, he played with Furry for a while, then turned his attention to the rest of his spoils. 500 galleons. A solid stack of new spells. And 6 more purple cards. Transfiguration X1. Potions Knowledge X1. All-Purpose Jinx X2. Occlumency X2. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, letting the spell knowledge and magical theory sink in. The data flowed smoothly into his mind, etched into memory. 5 minutes later, he opened his eyes sharper, more focused. Excellent! My occlumency is already at the level of a veteran with a decade of practice. No way Dumbledore or Snape can casually peek into my thoughts now. That should be enough to keep my secrets safe. Host, Alex Gaunt. Age, 11. Birthday, October 31st. Identity, founder of Gaunt Investments, graduate of Garden Elementary, incoming Hogwarts first year. Bloodline, Wizard Spirit, awakening will evolve with strength. Magic Scale, 7. Magical Items, none. Charms Talent, 5, outstanding. Defense against the Dark Arts Talent, 5, outstanding. Divination Talent, 0, Troll level. Dark Arts Talent, 9, Demon King descends. Gold Coins, 0. The draws had transformed him. His magical reserves had doubled according to the system. The average first-year student started at Magic Scale 1. Most adults reached around 5. He was already above that. Of course, raw magic meant nothing without control and knowledge. Even a well of magic could be rendered useless without the means to wield it. The days that followed were quiet but fruitful. Alex devoted himself to his magical studies. No wand yet, and unfortunately he hadn't drawn any wandless casting talents. Still, the knowledge from the Transfiguration and Potions purple cards gave him an edge. The system didn't provide full mastery, just a Hogwarts second-year level baseline. But duplicate draws had enhanced his understanding, deepening his grasp of the material. And crucially, his ceiling wasn't capped. With effort and time, he could surpass even the system's initial offerings. So he studied, practiced, experimented. Days passed. Until finally, July 31st arrived. 9 a.m. Ding dong. Ding dong. The doorbell chimed. Alex stood up, heart thrumming. They were here. The Hogwarts representative. But who? He opened the door, curiosity alive in his eyes. Standing on the threshold was a gaunt, pale-skinned man with shoulder-length greasy black hair. His features were angular, severe, and dominated by a massive hooked nose. His black robes fluttered in the summer breeze. He looked like a vampire bat that had crawled out of an old castle. Alex knew, of course. Severus Snape. But he had to pretend otherwise. Yes? Can I help you? Snape inclined his head slightly in a formal gesture, his voice low and scratchy. "Good morning, Mr. Gaunt. I am Severus Snape, Potions Master at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and head of Slytherin House. I've come today to help guide you into the world you were always meant to belong to. As your escort, I'll assist you in procuring the supplies needed for your magical education." Alex painted his face with just the right amount of surprise, eyes widening a touch. "Professor Snape, please come in." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the interior. "When I received that owl's letter, I didn't know what to think. Magic? It all sounded so unreal, but your visit makes me believe. Please, let's talk inside." Chapter 4, The Legacy of Gaunt and the Call of the Wand. In the drawing room, Alex and Snape sat opposite each other. For a moment, Alex found himself silently observing the man across from him with a mix of respect and melancholy. Snape had been one of those characters he hadn't liked much in the early films of his past life. Cold. Bitter. Cruel. But the deeper he'd gone into the story, the more he came to understand the man behind the sneer. A tragic figure burdened by guilt, regret, and a love that never died. A man who, in a twisted way, had paid for his sins by offering up the rest of his life in penance. And when death finally came, perhaps it was less punishment and more mercy. Snape, oblivious to the sentiment in Alex's eyes, began speaking in his usual grave tone. "Mr. Gaunt, your surname is well known in the wizarding world. Your ancestor, Salazar Slytherin, was one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts. The Slytherin House, which I currently head, bears his name." He paused, letting that sink in. "Although your family has declined in recent generations, the blood of pure magic still runs in your veins. I trust you will carry that legacy with dignity and perhaps even restore it to its former glory." Alex's heart skipped. He hadn't paid much attention to the Gaunt name before. But now that Snape mentioned it, he remembered Voldemort's mother had come from the Gaunt family. And more than that, the Resurrection Stone, one of the Deathly Hallows, had been a Gaunt heirloom passed down through the bloodline. It was probably still lying somewhere in the ruins of the old Gaunt shack. Snape continued for a while longer, patiently explaining the basics of the magical world, its structure, politics, and customs. Eventually, he fell quiet. "That's all the essential information. The rest, you will learn in due time at Hogwarts. Do you have any questions, Mr. Gaunt?" "No, Professor. If anything, I'm more excited than ever. I can't wait to see Diagon Alley," Alex replied truthfully, his curiosity brimming. "Very well. Please stand beside me and take hold of my wrist." Snape didn't waste time. Once Alex had a firm grip, the man performed apparition. There was the sound of rushing water like being flushed down a giant drain and the world twisted. Diagon Alley. Alex's eyes sparkled. The cobbled street stretched out before him, alive with activity. Witches and wizards bustled past in robes of every color, the air thick with magic and chatter. "We'll head to Gringotts first," Snape said. "While the Gaunt family has declined, it was once among the sacred 28. Your vault should still hold enough to cover your expenses." They made their way into the towering white building at the end of the street. Inside the grand hall of Gringotts, Snape led Alex to an empty counter and addressed the goblin behind it. "We need access to the Gaunt family vault. This is the heir." The goblin squinted at Alex, then motioned for him to drop a bead of blood into a magical vessel. After a few moments of murmuring and swirling light, the creature nodded and led them down below. Vault 710 was their destination, located deep in the lower levels of Gringotts. Alex got his first taste of the wild, rattling ride through the underground tunnels on the goblin cart. No dragons this time. Probably asleep. The vault door opened with a deep groan. It was vast but mostly empty. The fortune of the Gaunt line had withered with its name. Only a modest pile of galleons remained, stacked no higher than 2 meters. 50 to 100 galleons should be enough to cover your first year, Snape said flatly. Alex nodded. He had far more galleons tucked away in his system inventory, but he couldn't exactly explain that. So he filled a pouch with coins from the vault, slung it over his shoulder, and followed Snape out. Their next stop was a small, shabby shop with peeling gold letters on the sign. Ollivanders, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. A wizard's wand was an extension of the soul. Naturally, this was the first and most important purchase. The interior of the shop was much larger than it looked from outside. Classic undetectable extension charm. Towering shelves loomed, stuffed with narrow boxes. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and old dust. "Good morning, Professor Snape," came a gentle voice. "It's been some time. Let me see. Birchwood, dragon heartstring, 13.5 inches, wasn't it?" An old man with bright, inquisitive eyes appeared beside them. "Mr. Ollivander himself." "You remember correctly," Snape said curtly. "This is Mr. Gaunt. I've brought him to find his wand." "I must correct you, Professor," Ollivander said, eyes twinkling. "It is not the wizard who chooses the wand chooses the wizard." He turned his gaze on Alex, then raised a brow. "Your dominant hand, young man." "Right," Alex replied. With a flick of his wand, a tape measure zoomed through the air, circling Alex's limbs, taking his measurements all on its own. Once finished, Ollivander guided him toward the shelves. But before he could even select a box, the entire shelf trembled. Phoom! About 1/10 of the wand boxes sprang open all at once. Dozens of wands surged toward Alex, hovering around him in a slow orbit. "Oh, sweet Merlin!" Ollivander gasped. All of these wands are made with phoenix feather cores," he murmured, eyes wide. "The resonance, it's beyond anything I've ever seen. When my grandfather sold the wand to Dumbledore, it didn't react like this." Alex wasn't surprised. This had to be Furry's doing. The phoenix he had bonded with was practically overflowing with magic. Which gave him an idea. "If I may," Alex said carefully, "perhaps it's because of Furry." He raised a hand and with a burst of fire, Furry appeared, wings spread, golden feathers gleaming. She landed regally on his shoulder. Snape and Ollivander both stood frozen. "A phoenix? A real phoenix?" Ollivander's voice was barely a whisper. Your partner?" Alex nodded. "She arrived 2 days after I received my Hogwarts letter. Since then, we've been together. I believe her presence is why phoenix feather wands respond to me so strongly." He paused, then offered a suggestion. "Do you think it would be possible to custom forge a wand using one of Furry's tail feathers?" Ollivander's eyes gleamed with renewed purpose. Dumbledore's phoenix fox had grown moody over the years and hadn't shed feathers in quite some time. His supplies were running low. The chance to craft a wand from another phoenix's feather? It was the opportunity of a lifetime. "Come with me," he said at once, ushering Alex toward the back workshop. An old man. A young wizard. And a phoenix. Together, they began the delicate conversation of wand making. Something told Alex this wand would be perfect. Chapter 5, Phoenix Fire and a Fateful Encounter. Outside Ollivander's wand shop in Diagon Alley, Mr. Ollivander wore a smile that could only be described as strained. He watched Alex and Professor Snape leave, giving them a polite wave even as the corners of his mouth twitched with exhaustion. Snape gave Alex a strange look, half mocking, half amused. "You, Mr. Gaunt, are bound to be a very successful businessman in the wizarding world." Alex caught the faint sarcasm, but simply smiled, unbothered. Moments earlier, he had managed to sell just one of Furry's tail feathers to Ollivander for a cool 100 galleons, and that wasn't even the best part. The deal also came with a full waiver on the custom wand fee. Considering a single phoenix feather could be used to craft multiple wands, Alex had made a tidy profit. Snape, after that, accompanied him through the rest of his school supply shopping. Robes, books, potions kit, cauldron, everything a first year needed. At Alex's request, Snape then brought him to the leaky cauldron. Alex had decided to stay there for 3 days while his wand was being crafted. Since he didn't have a wand yet, old Tom the bartender had to help him open the passageway to Diagon Alley. There was no point returning home in the meantime. He'd just wait here, get his wand, then go back. Snape said a quick word to Tom, then left. Alex headed up to his room a bit dusty and cramped, cleaned up the worst of it, and collapsed into a rickety wooden chair beside the bed. Finally, time to check the system. From the moment he stepped into Diagon Alley, his interface had been pinging non-stop. But with Snape breathing down his neck, he hadn't dared open it. Congratulations, host! Achievement system unlocked. Achievement unlocked, Explorer of Diagon Alley reward, 200 gold coins. More notifications followed: Gringotts, Ollivanders, various stores Snape had dragged him into. Each one rewarded 50 coins. Looks like I'll have to visit every shop in the future. And once I'm strong enough, Nocturne Alley's getting a full sweep too. He stared at the newly earned gold. It wasn't much, but it was enough to tempt him. Still, Alex decided to wait until he saved up enough for a guaranteed gold pull. He was no fool. Luck wasn't exactly his strong suit. The kind of person who hits jackpot on their first spin? Complete myth. Absolutely not real. Nope. Never. 3 days later. With Tom's help, Alex slipped once again into Diagon Alley. In those 3 days, he'd grown quite close with the old bartender. Charm and good looks went a long way. And during that time, he had seen Harry Potter. The moment Harry entered the leaky cauldron, the place exploded with excitement. Grown men and women swarmed like crazed fans, whispering and pointing. Alex had watched from afar, spotting the scrawny boy beside the half-giant Hagrid. But he didn't go over. He had no interest in inserting himself into Potter's orbit. Harry equals trouble. That equation would remain constant for the next 7 years. And given that Alex's own last name was already Gaunt, the same line as Voldemort's mother, he didn't need more attention. He was fairly certain Dumbledore already had his eye on him. Once inside Ollivanders again, Alex practically ran toward the counter. "Mr. Gaunt, welcome," Ollivander greeted, visibly tired but energized by excitement. Clearly, he'd spent the past 3 days crafting non-stop. Come. These are the wands I made, all phoenix feather cores, but with different woods and lengths. Let's see which one speaks to you." Alex could feel the old man's passion burning just beneath the surface, even if his face looked ready to fall off. "This one, maple wood, 9 inches. Alex gave the wand a test flick. A blast of red light shot out, crashing into the wall and blowing a sizable hole in it. No, Ollivander shook his head. Too sensitive. Dangerous for a first wand. He adjusted his glasses and swiftly took it back, then handed over another. "Try this mahogany, 13 inches. Excellent for transfiguration." Alex didn't even get a chance to say anything before Ollivander pressed it into his hand. He gave it a gentle wave. This time, there was no light, but every single wand box in the store lifted off the shelves and floated around him. "Fascinating," Ollivander muttered, eyes wide. "These wands suit you, but there's still something missing. A subtle discord." After a pause, he pulled out one last wand, slender, crimson, and radiating heat. "Elder Phoenix Tree, 12.5 inches." Alex took it. The moment his fingers wrapped around the wand, everything changed. His magic surged within him, growing hot and bright. He didn't even think his instincts took over. He raised the wand high, magic coalescing, and from its tip burst a radiant, fiery phoenix. It shrieked into life and shot toward the entrance. Just as the door opened, a young girl stepped through, delicate, with a soft, pretty face and refined features, clearly of Asian descent. She barely had time to blink before the phoenix came screaming toward her. Her mind blanked. She froze. No! Alex shouted, eyes wide in horror. He slashed the wand to the right. The phoenix veered, obeying his magic, swerving past the girl and slamming into the wall beside her with an explosive burst. Boom! Dust filled the air. The phoenix vanished. Alex rushed over in 3 quick strides, grasping her shoulders. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Did you get hurt? As he examined her face, he couldn't help but pause. She was stunning. A soft oval face framed by sleek hair, with elfin eyes now brimming with fear and confusion. She looked both ethereal and adorably startled. Cho Chang had come to Diagon Alley today alone, intending to buy a wand care kit. Her parents were working, and she was old enough to handle a quick shopping trip. She had not expected to nearly get impaled by a flaming phoenix the moment she walked into Ollivander's. The creature had streaked right at her. She couldn't even scream, just stood frozen as it whooshed by and smashed into the wall. Then, a boy tall, gorgeous ran to her, speaking anxiously, holding her shoulders. Her mind slowly caught up. He's really handsome. That was her first thought. Alex, thanks to the awakened bloodline, had grown even more striking over the past few days. He was no longer just cute. He was dangerously close to the kind of looks that made people pause in the middle of the street. I am fine, she finally managed to say. Noticing his hands still resting on her shoulders, a soft blush crept up her cheeks, making her look even more delicate. Ollivander, standing a few paces away, stared at the scene. The handsome boy. The bashful beauty. Why was his stomach growling? He hadn't even eaten. Chapter 6, Wand Sparks and a Phoenix Feather Bond. I'm just glad you're all right. Alex let out a breath of relief as he looked at the girl in front of him, clearly more shocked than hurt. He smiled and asked, I never caught your name. Cho Chang, she replied with a soft, composed voice. I'm a second year at Hogwarts. I haven't seen you around before. Are you starting this year? Alex nodded, still trying not to gape at her beauty. Yeah, I'm a first year. Name's Alex Gaunt. He had suspected her identity the moment she introduced herself, but even so, her appearance had hit him like a truck. Bloody hell! This was Cho Chang? The girl who, in his past life, had made only a middling impression in the movies? Compared to the film's casting, this was the difference between a pixelated thumbnail and a 4K masterpiece. Now, standing before him, Cho was every bit the girl who could make Harry Potter himself lose sleep at night. T0 tier Hogwarts beauty, no doubt about it. I'm really sorry, Miss Zhang. I just received my wand, and I didn't control the magic properly. Though the wand wasn't officially his yet, that blazing mimic phoenix had made the decision for him. This was the wand. It's okay. That phoenix was beautiful, she said with a small smile. And no need to call me Miss Zhang, just Cho is fine. Ollivander, standing to the side, looked mildly offended. These kids, flirting shamelessly right in front of an old man who hadn't even had his tea yet. Ahem. Alex turned back to Ollivander and cleared his throat. Mr. Ollivander, I believe this wand is perfect for me. No need to test the others. Of course, Mr. Gaunt. That phoenix display just now was all the proof we needed. This wand will serve you well. With a flick of his wand, Ollivander cleaned up the mess of scattered wand boxes. Then he turned toward Cho. Miss Zhang, did your wand run into trouble? No, nothing like that, Cho answered with a polite smile. I just came to pick up a care kit. I wanted to take better care of it going forward. Once she had her set, she and Alex stepped out of the shop together. She looked effortlessly elegant in her white summer dress, sunlight catching in her dark hair. I feel bad about earlier, Alex said. Let me make it up to you. Can I treat you to ice cream at Florian Fortescue's? Honestly, he just wanted to stake his claim early. If the boy who lived was still wandering cluelessly through the magical world, then so be it. Let him go chase redheads. Cho tilted her head with a small smile. You don't need to do that, but the ice cream there is pretty good. She didn't refuse. That was enough for Alex. They made their way to Florian's, settled into a cozy corner, and enjoyed the best of magical sweets. Between scoops of mint chocolate and lemon butter, Alex pulled out jokes and stories from his previous life, sending Cho into peals of laughter. Her eyes sparkled when she laughed. She was radiant. By the time they parted, Cho had even invited him to sit with her on the Hogwarts Express and promised to introduce him to her best friend. August 31st. Time slipped by like water. Alex stood in his room, looking at the small suitcase at his feet. He gave a satisfied nod. Undetectable extension charm is amazing. Lugging around trunks like a muggle peasant? Never again. He had managed to pull the purple rank charm in one of his daily free draws and had applied it to a simple suitcase. It wasn't perfect, just entry-level mastery, but it gave him more than enough room for his belongings. He called for a cab and arrived at King's Cross station in plenty of time. When he saw a family walk briskly into a column between platforms 9 and 10 and disappear, he followed suit, walking casually toward the pillar and slipping through. His eyes widened. The bright red engine of the Hogwarts Express was waiting beside the platform, steaming and gleaming in the morning sun. Parents hugged their children. Luggage and owls were shuffled around. The platform was alive with noise and magic. Alex hopped aboard, picked a random compartment, and sat down. He planned to wait for the train to start before finding Cho. Once they were on the move, he made his way through the carriages. It didn't take long. After passing just 2 compartments, he found her. Cho, long time no see, he said, smiling from the door. She looked up and smiled brightly. Sitting across from her was a freckled girl with curly hair and an observant gaze. Alex, you made it. They hadn't seen each other in person since that day in Ollivanders, but they'd kept in touch through letters delivered, of course, by Furry. When Cho had first received one, she'd nearly fainted. A real phoenix flying into her bedroom window. She'd sent 3 letters in reply just to ask about Furry. Alex stepped inside and sat beside her, nodding politely at the girl across from them. And who might this be? He asked. Cho quickly introduced them. Alex, this is Marietta Edgecombe, my best friend. Marietta, this is Alex Gaunt. Marietta raised a brow. Gaunt? As in the sacred 28 Gaunt. My mom said that family vanished from the British wizarding scene ages ago. Only a few distant cousins left across the Atlantic. That's us, Alex replied easily. I only found out after Professor Snape visited me. I grew up in a muggle orphanage, never even knew I was a wizard until this summer. He said it so smoothly you'd think it was someone else's story. Marietta immediately looked apologetic. But Cho's heart ached. She hadn't expected someone as bright and confident as Alex to have come from such a lonely place. She reached out without thinking, her small hand sliding into his. I'm sorry, Alex. Her voice was soft. You must have felt so alone. Her fingers trembled slightly in his palm, but she didn't let go. Alex was touched. He hadn't felt sad about it. Being an orphan wasn't the worst deal in his mind. At least he didn't have to pretend to love a bunch of fictional parents. But Cho's concern still warmed him. He gently wrapped his hand around hers. Her skin was soft, warm. Their eyes met, and in that instant, something shifted between them, subtle but unmistakable. Not wanting to linger on the heavy topic, Alex quickly changed the subject. So, tell me about Quidditch. You mentioned you play. That did the trick. Cho lit up like Christmas. She started rattling off rules, positions, strategies, talking a mile a minute about broom models, pitch conditions, and her dream of becoming Ravenclaw Seeker. Alex just leaned back and listened, grinning. In his past life, he'd thought flying on a broom looked incredible. In this one, he was definitely going to try it for himself. Especially since, in one of his daily card pulls, he'd scored a blue-tier flight experience card. Just needed a broom and a little practice. Not long after, the trolley which came rolling down the aisle, smiling cheerfully. Anything off the trolley, dears? Alex's eyes lit up. This was it, the legendary Hogwarts sweets. Everything. One of each. The witch blinked. Then laughed, delighted, and piled a small mountain of sweets onto the compartment table. Alex turned to Cho and Marietta. I may have gone a little overboard. Want to help me finish this? Marietta grinned. If you insist. They tucked in together, laughing and chatting as the train rolled toward a brand new chapter of their magical lives. Chapter 7, The Sorting Path and the Phoenix's Gaze. The train ride passed in a blur of laughter and conversation, and before long, dusk settled in outside the windows. The Hogwarts Express began to slow, its steady clatter softening into an occasional groan. We're here, someone whispered. The compartment buzzed with movement as students scrambled to change out of their Muggle clothes and into their Hogwarts robes. Outside, the rain had begun thin, persistent, and cold. Alex shivered as he looked out at the grey drizzle coating the windowpane. He reached into his suitcase and pulled out a soft scarf, then gently wrapped it around Cho's neck. Wear this. It's cold out there. Cho blushed, her fingers brushing the scarf, but she didn't protest. As the train squealed to a final halt, the doors opened and waves of students spilled out. Alex and Cho joined the crowd. First years. First years, this way. A booming voice echoed across the platform. There stood a towering figure, easily over 3 meters tall, broad enough to block the wind with his back alone. His shaggy hair and massive coat made him look like a bear in boots. That's Hagrid, Alex thought with a smile. I'll see you soon, he said to Cho with a nod. Good luck, Alex. I hope you're sorted into Ravenclaw, she said softly, her eyes warm with hope. Alex's chest tightened just a bit. With a name like Gaunt, his chances of ending up in Slytherin were practically set in stone. Pure blood lineage. Descendant of Salazar Slytherin himself. But for that look in her eyes he'd try. If the Sorting Hat could be reasoned with, he'd try to tilt fate. He didn't want to end up in a house where half his dorm mates might hiss at his mixed bloodline, and the other half might try to test his dueling skills in the first week. Soon, the cluster of first years gathered near Hagrid. He lifted an old lantern and led them down a winding path through the rain. Mind your step. This bit's tricky, he called back as they struggled through mud and wet stones. Hagrid's lantern cast only a dim halo. Alex pulled out his wand. Lumos. A pale, silver-white light bloomed at the wand's tip, lighting the path around him. The students behind him sighed in relief. Wow, Ron, look! He's brilliant! Alex turned around at the familiar voice and found himself looking into the wide eyes of Harry Potter and the ever-enthusiastic Ron Weasley. Harry looked slightly sheepish under the attention. Hi. I'm Harry. Harry Potter. This is Ron. Alex gave them a polite nod. Nice to meet you. I'm Alex Gaunt. Harry noticed right away that Alex didn't gasp or stare at his name. No wide eyes. No excited stammering. Instantly, Harry felt more relaxed. You're from a Muggle family too, he asked. I mean, are you? Sort of, Alex said with a smile that gave nothing away. Harry lit up. That's cool. I met a girl on the train, Hermione Granger. She's from a Muggle family too, but she's already learned magic. She fixed my glasses with a spell. Alex chuckled softly. I just read ahead, that's all. Got lucky and picked up a spell or two. He wasn't avoiding Harry, not intentionally. He just didn't want to fall into the gravity well that surrounded the boy who lived. But a casual friendship? That was fine. Let Dumbledore try to set traps. Alex would just step lightly. Harry scratched the back of his head, looking a little embarrassed. I tried reading the books, but I couldn't make anything work. No spark or light or anything. You'll get it. Most magic doesn't work without a wand, Alex said kindly. Ron says Gryffindor's the best house, Harry added. I just hope I don't get put in Slytherin. Ron nodded furiously beside him. The Weasleys would probably exile anyone who ended up in green and silver. Alex gave a wry smile. He glanced at the memory of a certain soft hand in his, a delicate voice saying, I hope you go to Ravenclaw. I'm hoping for Ravenclaw, honestly. Feels right. Really? Why? Harry asked. Alex blinked. No reason. Just think it suits me better. He wasn't about to admit he thought Cho would look lovely sitting across from him at the dinner table each day. The boats awaited at the lake's edge. 4 students to a boat, and Alex climbed into one with Harry, Ron, and a quiet, mousy boy who hadn't said a word. The boats glided silently across the black water. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the castle loomed ahead majestic and ancient, its glowing windows blinking through the mist. When Hagrid called for them to duck their heads beneath a low stone arch, Alex had to stop himself from laughing. Even with his enormous frame hunched down, Hagrid was still taller than the tallest first year. Yet everyone obediently ducked along with him. Eventually, the boats reached the landing. One by one, they climbed out, and Hagrid led them through the tunnel, across the grass, and up to the towering front gates. The castle doors creaked open. Standing there was a stern-looking witch with a pointed emerald hat, her lips pursed tight, her robes immaculate. Professor McGonagall. Even the chatty students fell silent. All first years are here, Professor McGonagall, Hagrid said. Thank you, Hagrid. I'll take it from here. She gave a subtle flick of her wand, and instantly, the soaked robes of the students dried, their hair neatened, their boots cleaned. The children stared in awe. With a sharp turn, she led them into the entrance hall. Alex's breath caught in his throat. The great hall opened before them like a dream, floating candles above 4 long tables, golden plates and goblets, walls lined with ancient tapestries, and a ceiling enchanted to look like the starry sky. At the very front, the staff sat at a high table. Dumbledore, unmistakable, with his half-moon glasses and silver beard, was speaking quietly to Snape. And at the very center of the stage, sat the Sorting Hat. Old, patched, and fraying but unmistakably alive. Professor McGonagall didn't lead them all the way through the hall, but stopped them near the entrance and arranged them into neat rows. Many older students glanced their way, whispering, watching. McGonagall stepped forward. Welcome to Hogwarts, she said. In a moment, you will be sorted into one of 4 houses. This house will be your home while you are here, your family. It is where you will eat, sleep, and learn. I will call your name. Step forward, sit on the stool, and place the Sorting Hat on your head. It will decide where you belong. Alex stood with the other first years, straight and calm. His heart was pounding, but his face showed nothing. His fingers brushed the handle of his wand. The castle smelled of candle wax and ancient stone. The Sorting Hat waited. He looked around at the golden glow of the hall, the high ceiling painted in starlight, and the 4 tables filled with expectant faces. Hogwarts. He was finally here. Chapter 8, The Hat's Choice, The Boy's Will. On the raised platform, the Sorting Hat, patched, weathered, and ancient, suddenly split down the brim with a slow, jagged tear, revealing what passed for its mouth. And then it began to sing. Some nonsensical ballad, completely deranged, and somehow still managing to rhyme. No need to quote it, will spare the parchment. When it finished, thunderous applause erupted across the great hall. The hat bowed deeply to each of the 4 house tables in turn before going utterly still again, as though it had never moved. Professor McGonagall stepped forward, parchment in hand, and raised her voice crisply through the echoing hall. The following students, when your name is called, please come forward, sit on the stool, and put on the sorting hat. She paused. Solid iron? Sorry, Hannah Abbott. McGonagall frowned at her own slip, giving her head a slight shake. A rather flustered Hannah Abbott scampered to the front. The moment the sorting hat touched her head, it bellowed. Hufflepuff. A cheer rose from the Hufflepuff table, hooped and whistled like they'd just recruited their new MVP. More names followed, each child taking their place on the stool, met with cheers from whichever house claimed them. Gryffindor was especially loud, and 2 red-haired boys actually booed when someone got sent to Slytherin. And then Alex Gaunt. As soon as Professor McGonagall called the name, a wave of attention rippled across the hall. On the platform, several teachers turned their heads. At the Slytherin table, heads craned forward, students sitting up straighter. The name Gaunt wasn't just familiar, it was ancient. A name tied to the blood of Salazar Slytherin himself. Even among the first years, a small brunette with a messy halo of curls looked up in surprise. Alex ignored them all. Calm, collected, his face unreadable. He walked to the stool under the weight of dozens of stares. He looked down at the sorting hat with a frown of distaste, like someone being asked to wear a very old, very smelly sock. Then, with visible reluctance, he placed it on his head. Ah, another stubborn brat, the hat grumbled in his mind. Let me guess you've decided you know better than 1,000 years of sorting wisdom. Nice to meet you too, Alex replied dryly. You're the great sorting hat, yeah? How is it no one's thought to give you a proper wash? Someone did. Threw me into the Black Lake 2 centuries ago. Gryffindor lad. Thought he was being clever. Right. That explains the swampy musk. The hat gave a mental snort. You're practically singing Slytherin from every drop of blood in your veins. Heritage, ambition, cunning, you're a perfect fit. Sly. Don't finish that word. Alex clenched his thoughts tightly, repeating like a mantra, Ravenclaw. 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 But why? You do thirst for knowledge, yes, but it's more than that. The power in you, you could make a name in Slytherin. Power doesn't define me, Alex countered. Blood doesn't either. I want a place where my mind can grow. Where I'm not defined by my surname. You'd thrive in Slytherin. I'd rather live in Ravenclaw. The hat paused. You'd clean me if I let you go to Ravenclaw. Deal. Ha. Oh, Rowena's going to laugh her hat off when she hears I gave up a Slytherin heir for a good rinse. The hat hesitated. Then, with theatrical volume. Ravenclaw. The hall froze. A half-formed Sly had hung on the air, but it died as the sorting hat's shout changed direction mid-word. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the staff table blinked in surprise. Professor Snape looked like he'd just swallowed a live toad. The air around him dropped 5 degrees. It was unheard of. Never in Hogwarts' 1,000-year history had a student openly rejected the sorting hat's will and changed the house they were destined for. And now, right in front of everyone, Alex Gaunt, direct descendant of the Slytherin line, had chosen not to walk the path laid before him. Dumbledore's eyes gleamed behind his half-moon spectacles. He hadn't expected this. He had plans for that boy. But this made things interesting. Meanwhile, the Slytherin table stood in fury. Their jaws clenched, their gazes sharp. Some of them glared as though they'd like nothing more than to duel Alex on the spot. Alex didn't care. He stood, removed the sorting hat from his head, and much to everyone's shock pointed his wand at it. Aguamenti. A jet of fresh, clean water blasted the hat. Oh! Ah! Merlin's beard. That's the stuff. The hat moaned in pleasure. Yes. You're a keeper, kid. Keep going. Right on the brim. Oh yes, that's been itchy for years. Alex, expression neutral, turned and walked toward the Ravenclaw table, leaving the hat drenched and babbling on the stool. Applause burst from Ravenclaw and Gryffindor alike. "Nice one, Alex. Should have been in Gryffindor, mate." Two redheads near the Gryffindor table stood up and whistled. "Gaunt's got guts," one of them yelled. The other was quickly pulled back down by a scowling older brother. Alex reached the Ravenclaw table and sat down beside Cho. She looked at him with eyes wide, cheeks flushed with excitement. "I told you I'd try," Alex whispered. "Welcome to Ravenclaw," she said, beaming. Her fingers slipped into his under the table. Alex squeezed gently, and the moment lingered, warm and private amid the chaos. The ceremony moved on. Hermione Granger gave Alex a curious glance before being sorted into Gryffindor. Then came Harry Potter. The hall exploded when he was sorted also into Gryffindor. The twins nearly flipped the table screaming, "We got Harry! We got Harry!" But Alex barely noticed. He and Cho were deep in hushed conversation, their hands still intertwined. Several Ravenclaw girls down the table exchanged sour glances. Great! They finally get a handsome new first year, and Cho immediately claims him. The sorting ceremony ended. Dumbledore rose. The students quieted, eyes fixed on the eccentric, brilliant man who stood at the head of it all. His eyes twinkled. "Welcome, welcome to another year at Hogwarts. Before we feast, I have only a few words to say, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak." He sat down. A moment passed. Then the golden plates filled with food, mountains of it. Roasted meats, fresh bread, pumpkin juice, and 100 things Alex couldn't name. The feast had begun. Chapter 9, Eagle's Nest and Daily Quests. The banquet table was a feast worthy of legends. Even though Alex had filled up on snacks aboard the train, his appetite came roaring back the moment the aromas hit his nose. He was a growing boy, after all, and Hogwarts house elves clearly knew their craft. The dishes were vibrant and varied: roasted beef, pork chops, lamb ribs, mashed potatoes, crispy fries, hot dogs, Yorkshire puddings, pea shoots, meat gravy, and even a pot of velvety French onion soup. Every plate shimmered with warmth and spice. Alex wasted no time. He grabbed a juicy steak, ladled out a generous bowl of meat sauce, and dove in like a man starved. Cho, watching him with a soft smile, giggled as he chewed like he'd been cursed with a bottomless stomach. She wasn't all that hungry herself, so instead of eating, she began handing him food, spooning potatoes, slicing meat, offering buns with a delighted expression on her face. Before long, she discovered the joy of feeding someone. And Alex? He was thoroughly enjoying being fed. But just as he was about to ask for more pudding, he sensed a sharp, sour gaze drilling into him. He looked up and spotted a tall Ravenclaw senior sitting a few seats away, watching them with the air of a dying man in a desert watching someone bathe in champagne. Once their eyes met, the older boy stood and introduced himself. "Hi there. Roger Davies, 4th year. You're seriously something, mate. Just sorted in, and you've already won over the most beautiful girl in Ravenclaw. Care to teach me your ways?" Cho's face flushed red at the compliment but didn't say anything to deny it. Alex chuckled and replied, half joking. "Well, first, be as handsome as me. Then maybe conjure a phoenix. Girls love mythical birds." That earned him a jab in the ribs from Cho, her fingers digging into his waist with mock irritation. Still, even she couldn't help but smile at the memory. Roger watched the two of them with a miserable expression. This was not how you taught someone to talk to girls. This was psychological warfare. As the plates slowly emptied and the air filled with soft conversation, the food vanished, cleared away in the blink of an eye. Dumbledore stood again, twinkling as always. "Now, before we all head off to bed, let's sing the school song together." With a wave of his wand, glowing golden letters shimmered into the air, revealing the lyrics. He tapped the wand like a conductor's baton. Ready, sing! And chaos ensued. Each person sang in their own tempo, tune, and tone. Some whispered it like a lullaby, others belted it like they were auditioning for the West End. At the Gryffindor table, the red-headed twins sang the whole thing in a gloomy funeral march that made Alex's eyebrows twitch. When it finally ended, Dumbledore wiped a theatrical tear from his eye and made a few final announcements. He offered some warm words, dropped a subtle hint at Harry Potter, then dismissed the students to their dorms under the guidance of the prefects. Ravenclaw's male prefect introduced himself as Dietrich Wiggins, a calm and composed sixth-year student. He led the Ravenclaw first years out of the Great Hall, up the vast marble staircases, taking a shortcut through a quiet hallway. Before long, they arrived at the base of the Ravenclaw Tower. There, a large eagle-shaped bronze door knocker rested on an arched wooden door. Dietrich stepped forward and knocked once. The eagle's eyes flickered. Then it spoke, voice smooth and inquisitive. To describe an ugly girl as beautiful, what is the most suitable word? Dietrich turned to them and smiled. Ravenclaw does things differently. We don't use fixed passwords. If you have wit and wisdom, you may enter. Even our own housemates must solve the riddles. If you fail, you'll have to wait for someone smarter to open the door. He grinned a bit wider. But if one of you can solve this, I'll personally grant you a private dormitory. That made a few of the first years stir. Several of them huddled to discuss, but no one dared speak up. Alex, however, was already moving. He stepped forward, met the eagle's gaze, and said softly, "A lie." "Correct." The door creaked open on its own. Several students stared in awe. Even Dietrich gave a low whistle. "Well done," the prefect said. "A private room it is." He led them inside, then pointed Alex toward a slightly smaller chamber branching off from the others. Alex stepped in, surveyed the space, and nodded in approval. A double bed sat at the center, with a wide desk on the right and a wardrobe and changing room on the left. Clean, quiet, and most importantly private. Following Dietrich's instructions, Alex placed a slip of paper with his name into a slot near the bed. Moments later, with a soft pop, his luggage appeared by the wardrobe. "House elves," he murmured, impressed. "Always efficient." Just as he was about to unpack, a familiar chime rang in his mind. Ding! Daily quest system unlocked. Complete daily tasks to earn 100 gold. No penalty for failure. Alex froze. Then he immediately summoned the system interface and scanned the new feature. Daily quests. Complete any 2 of the 3 listed tasks to receive the full reward. Today's list. Use Oxio 10 times. 0/10. Read 30 pages of the Standard Book of Spells Grade 1. 0/30. Play with Furry for 10 minutes. 0/10. Alex chuckled. This was perfect. Nothing too intense. No Voldemort slaying requirements, thank Merlin. He raised a finger and snapped. With a burst of flames, Furry the Phoenix reappeared in the air, wings spread and eyes gleaming. She landed beside him, giving his hand a pointed little peck. Yeah, I know. I missed you too. I didn't summon you on the train because I thought I'd have roommates, all right. Originally, Alex hadn't intended to bring Furry out so soon, no need to freak out the other kids with a literal mythical firebird. But now that he had a private room, there was no reason to hide. He played with Furry for a while, then practiced Oxio 10 times successfully. Daily quests complete. He opened his personal stats panel. Name, Alex Gaunt. Age, 11. Birthday, October 31st. Status, first year at Hogwarts. Bloodline, Spirit-born, awakening progression tied to power. Magical core, 8.5, grows naturally, boosted by ancient lineage. Magical items. Guardian Amulet, blocks 3 aura level attacks, 2 Professor level, 1 near legendary 2 4 HR cooldown. Felix Felicis times 1. Inspiration potion times 3. Instant mana recovery potion times 3. Spell aptitude. Charms, 5, outstanding. Defense against the dark arts, 5, outstanding. Known spells. Oxio. Protego. Sectum Sempra. More. Dark Magic, 9, Demon King's Legacy. Gold, 1300. Looking over the panel, Alex grinned. His raw magic was already higher than most adult wizards. He knew powerful spells, had a pocket full of rare potions, and now had daily income from the system. The future looked brighter than ever. Yawning, he cleaned up, slid under the covers, and shut his eyes. Tomorrow, the true Hogwarts experience would begin. Chapter 10, Staircases, Spells, and Spark. The next morning, just after sunrise, Alex was already up and moving. Thanks to his useless system lacking a basic map function, he'd decided to spend his free morning exploring the labyrinth that was Hogwarts. With so many shifting staircases, secret passages, and vanishing doorways, it wasn't unusual for younger students to spend half the day getting lost just trying to find their class. By mid-morning, he'd at least figured out the main routes to the Charms classroom and the Great Hall. Not bad for a first year with zero magical GPS. When he arrived at breakfast, the hall was already filled with students chatting and munching on toast. Alex found an empty seat and began eating quietly. Beef pies and carrot vegetable soup. Nothing fancy, but enough to keep a growing wizard like him energized. He couldn't help but sigh, though. Hogwarts' kitchen was efficient, yes, but the food was hopelessly British. One of these days, he swore he'd sneak down to the kitchens, find the house elves, and teach them some proper Chinese breakfasts. Yueshao, hot soy milk, savory tofu pudding. If anyone could master the art of making dim sum overnight, it was house elves. Honestly, Hogwarts felt less like a school and more like a vacation. As a new first year, his schedule was light, and he even had Thursdays off entirely. The house elves kept his room spotless, his clothes clean, and there was food at every turn. Compared to home, this place was a dream. Lost in thought, he didn't even notice someone approaching until a gentle hand tapped his shoulder. He looked up to see Cho standing there, with Marietta beside her. "You didn't wait for me," Cho said with a slight frown, her tone just shy of a pout. "You're still new. It's easy to get lost here." Alex smiled sheepishly and motioned for them to sit down. "I got up early, didn't really have anything to do, so I went out and explored a bit. Figured I should learn the staircases before they eat me alive." "What classes do you have today?" Cho asked, taking her wand out and giving it a light tap. Her breakfast appeared on the table in front of her, hot and ready. "Charms with Professor Flitwick. Astronomy class later tonight, on the rooftop observatory." Cho's eyes lit up. "Professor Flitwick's amazing. He's a true master of charms, and he's really kind to his students." Marietta added from the side, clearly excited to contribute. "He's also part goblin, apparently. And rumor has it, he used to be a dueling champion back in the day." Alex raised a brow at that. He hadn't known that part. Back in his previous life, he never read the books and barely remembered the movies, only the major story beats. Flitwick being a beast in combat had definitely slipped under his radar. After breakfast, Alex invited Cho for a walk. They strolled together past the lawns, down a sun-dappled path, until they reached the Black Lake. The breeze rolled across the water, rustling Cho's dark hair like silk ribbons in the wind. He turned to look at her. Her side profile was calm and elegant, delicate nose, soft lips, and for a second, he forgot everything else. The world fell away. Cho caught his gaze and looked down, flustered. Alex gently reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. They walked like that until they found a bench near the water. Sitting down, they stayed close, saying little, simply watching the lake and the dark edges of the forbidden forest beyond it. Her shoulder eventually came to rest against his, and he instinctively wrapped an arm around her. Nothing more happened. Just quiet warmth. A moment of stillness before the storm of classes and spells. Eventually, Cho had to head off for her class. They walked back together, parted ways at the castle, and Alex, with nothing better to do before his afternoon class, decided to head back to his room and catch up on sleep. By afternoon, Alex made his way to the Charms classroom. Today's lesson was held with the Hufflepuffs, so he didn't spot Harry, Ron, or Hermione around. He slid into a seat in the back row, next to a boy with neatly combed hair and sharp eyes. "Afternoon, Anthony." "Afternoon, Alex." Anthony Goldstein was a pure-blood wizard whose parents worked for the Department of Magical Transportation. They'd hit it off yesterday on the way back to the common room. As the last students filed in, the bell rang and Professor Flitwick entered with a spring in his step, quite literally. The diminutive professor climbed onto a stack of books so he could see over the lectern. He pulled out a roll of parchment and began to call names, taking attendance with meticulous care. Alex couldn't help but feel like he'd been thrown back into university again. Once everyone was accounted for, Flitwick set the parchment down. "Ladies and gentlemen, charms is the very cornerstone of modern magic. With charms, we shape the world around us, bending reality to suit our will." He glanced around with bright, eager eyes. While defense against the dark arts and transfiguration may seem like separate disciplines, they are all at their heart forms of charms. In this class, we will focus on spells that serve us in daily life. Practical magic. Like the levitation charm. With a flick of his wand, the desk in front of him lifted off the ground and began to pirouette in midair, twirling like it was enchanted by music only it could hear. And, of course, the vanishing spell. With a quick motion, he tapped the twirling desk and it vanished instantly. The classroom erupted in gasps and whispers. Flitwick smiled, satisfied by the reaction. Another flick, and the desk reappeared, as still and ordinary as ever. "Now, let's begin today's lesson. The wand lighting charm. Repeat after me, Lumos. Grip your wand firmly and gesture forward like so." He demonstrated the precise movements and intonation, coaching them on rhythm and posture. Then he stepped back. "Go on, now. Try it yourselves." Immediately, the classroom filled with chanting voices. "Lumos. Lumos. Lumos." Some wands flickered faintly, some didn't react at all. A few students managed to summon a dim glow, but it fizzled quickly. Alex pulled out his wand, exhaled, and murmured, "Lumos." A brilliant white light burst from his wand tip. He twisted it slightly, and the light shifted, glowing, pulsing, changing from white to blue to green and back again. Gasps echoed around him. Professor Flitwick zipped across the classroom, eyes wide with delight. "Wonderful! Astounding, Mr. Gaunt." He sounded almost emotional. "To not only succeed on your first attempt but to alter the charm's properties on instinct, remarkable." Alex offered an awkward smile. "I, just read the textbook early. Tried a few times before class." He had no idea why Flitwick looked like he was about to cry over a flashlight spell. Still, it wasn't a bad feeling. First class of the year and he'd already made an impression. As the bell echoed through the classroom, Charms class came to an end. Professor Flitwick awarded Ravenclaw 10 points on the spot, moved by Alex Gaunt's dazzling performance. Students began filing out in pairs and small clusters, their chatter trailing into the corridors beyond. But Alex stayed behind. He had questions. When the classroom was finally empty, Flitwick turned with mild surprise. "Mr. Gaunt, is there something I can help you with?" "Yes, Professor," Alex replied. "I had a few questions about charms that I hoped you could help me with." "Of course. Come with me to my office." Flitwick's office was larger than expected. The walls were completely hidden behind towering bookshelves, stacked floor to ceiling. Each shelf was crammed with books, and not the kind you'd find in Flourish and Blots. Many of them bore no publisher's mark at all. Alex could sense it immediately. This was a library built by a true master of the craft. The professor settled into his cushioned chair and gestured to the seat across from him. Alex took it without hesitation. "Tea, Mr. Gaunt." "Red tea, no sugar." "Thank you." Alex had always had a fondness for tea. But English tea doused in sugar? That was an abomination. Did these people have to sweeten everything? "An excellent choice," Flitwick nodded with a knowing smile. With a flick of his wand, a beautiful porcelain tea set materialized mid-air. The cups and teapot floated on their own, pouring and serving with delicate precision. "Wonderful application of the levitation charm, Professor." "Why, thank you," Flitwick said, chuckling softly. "Now then, Mr. Gaunt, your question." Alex nodded, straightening his back. "Professor, I think I have some natural aptitude for charms. Before term started, I already studied most of the spells in the Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1. He paused, then continued, a little more cautiously. "But I've hit a wall. I've been trying to master silent casting and wandless casting, and I haven't made much progress. I thought with enough practice, I'd get somewhere, but..." He shook his head. "Silent casting works sometimes. Wandless? Not even once." Flitwick leaned forward, intrigued. "Would you mind giving me a little demonstration of your current capabilities, Mr. Gaunt?" Without a word, Alex raised his wand. With a smooth flourish, he levitated the teapot, refilled the professor's cup with perfect control, then made the pot vanish into thin air with a soft pop. A moment later, he cast the counterspell and the teapot returned to the table, untouched, steaming faintly. Clap, clap, clap. Applause broke out across the desk. Flitwick was practically beaming. "Marvelous! Absolutely splendid, Mr. Gaunt. If you had done that during class, I would have given you 20 points, no, 50. Ravenclaw hasn't seen talent like yours in a long, long time." The professor dabbed at the corners of his eyes with a handkerchief, misty-eyed once again. Alex tried not to squirm. After a few quiet moments, Flitwick regained his composure. His fingers drummed lightly on the table. Then he looked up. "Mr. Gaunt, tell me, why do you think wizards need wands and incantations to cast spells?" Alex blinked. He hadn't expected that. Still, he leaned back in his chair and considered the question carefully. After some thought, he answered. "I think spells require focus. Reciting an incantation channels our concentration. The wand, combined with the right gestures, activates and directs the magic inside us. When we align those elements, the magic flows properly." Flitwick nodded, pleased. "A very good answer. You're already thinking at the level of someone preparing for their OWLS." He paused again, then smiled gently. "But you're missing something. Something that many witches and wizards never think to consider." He tapped a finger to his temple. "Willpower." Alex blinked. "Willpower?" "Yes," Flitwick said. "When you speak an incantation, you aren't just focusing your mind. You're embedding your will into the words. That's what makes magic real. That's why we are wizards. We believe something can be done, and through magic, it becomes so." He sipped his tea slowly, letting the thought sink in. When you attempt silent casting, your intent must be even more concentrated. You are replacing spoken command with pure willpower. If your intent wavers, the spell will fail. He set his cup down. The trade-off is this: silent spells are subtler, but slightly weaker. You give up a measure of force for the sake of stealth or speed. Alex mulled that over. The gears in his head were turning now. He didn't speak, just raised his wand again and focused. He pointed to the quill resting on the desk. With a flash of intention, not words, the feather lifted gently into the air. But the second his focus slipped, it drifted back down again. Still, Flitwick was already grinning. "Marvelous, Mr. Gaunt. You've already begun to grasp the concept. For someone your age, that's remarkable." He leaned back, pride gleaming in his eyes. "For 6 years, Slytherin has claimed the House Cup. Ravenclaw, while we prize knowledge, has always treated such competitions as secondary. But I'll admit it, I've longed to see us win, even once. And with you here, I think we just might." Alex met his gaze and offered a small smile. "Thank you, Professor. I wouldn't have gotten this far without your help." He hesitated for a moment, then pressed forward. "And wandless casting? Is that just, even stronger willpower?" "Indeed," Flitwick replied. "But more than that, you must understand magic on a deeper level. Magic without a wand requires a true resonance with the forces you're commanding." He steepled his fingers. "In your 3rd year, I highly recommend you take Ancient Runes. It will help you understand the foundational logic behind spells and the languages of power that shaped them." "Ancient Runes, got it," Alex said, already making a mental note. He stood up and bowed slightly. "Thank you for everything today." Flitwick smiled kindly and gave a slight nod in return. "My door is always open to you, Mr. Gaunt." With that, Alex turned and left the office, his thoughts full of fire. And somewhere deep inside, that fire began to shift to shape to awaken. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 12, Secrets in the Stacks and a Midnight Chase. Leaving Professor Flitwick's office, Alex Gaunt made his way toward the library, his mind still buzzing with thoughts from their conversation. Flitwick hadn't just answered his questions, he had opened a door, one that led deeper into the very soul of magic itself. Magic, Alex now realized, wasn't just about reciting incantations and flicking wands. It was mystery and will and structure, bound together in ancient language and invisible power. Most wizards were content to use spells without understanding them, mechanics without meaning. And that was fine, because Hogwarts wasn't built to produce magical scholars. It was built to educate Britain's entire magical population. But if you wanted more, if you craved real understanding, you had to seek it out yourself. And Alex was ready to do just that. At the library entrance, he passed by Madame Pants, the stern guardian of Hogwarts' literary treasures. Her hawk-like gaze scanned the room with terrifying precision. The mere sound of a page turning too quickly could draw her icy glare, and Merlin helped the student who dared to dog-ear a page. Alex offered a polite nod and headed for the general stacks. He soon found what he was looking for, an introduction to ancient runes by Sylvis Victor, the textbook used by 3rd years all the way through their OWLs. For now, it would be more than enough. He settled into a quiet corner and began to read, completely absorbed until dinner time arrived. Only then did he reluctantly slide the book back onto the shelf. "I need to buy a copy," he muttered to himself. "Can't keep wasting time coming here every day." But he knew better than to send his phoenix, Fury, for such a simple errand. A blazing bird would cause quite the scene. No, he'd borrow a school owl from the owl post later. For now, tonight called for a proper, midnight excursion. The school rules? Please. As the heir of the Brotherhood, Alex lived by a simple creed. If no one sees you break the rules, then you didn't break them. At the Great Hall, he found Cho already seated, and she had saved him a spot. He slid into the seat. In moments, the empty plate before him overflowed with food nearly 4 times what was on anyone else's plate. A mountain of meat, potatoes, and warm rolls threatened to topple onto the tablecloth. Cho laughed softly. "Did someone skip lunch?" "I'll have you know, reading burns a lot of energy," Alex replied, his voice muffled by roast beef. "Straight from the library." "Truly Ravenclaw's little prodigy," she teased, handing him a glass of juice so he didn't choke to death mid-boast. "First house points of the year, all thanks to you." Alex rolled his eyes, ignoring her playful tone and focused on dinner. Every bite fueled the fire that was quietly building inside him, a drive not just to be good, but to be exceptional. After dinner, Cho returned to the common room to play wizard's chess with her dorm mates. Alex, meanwhile, dragged himself up the long stairs to the astronomy tower. Time for his least favorite subject. Despite Hogwarts being a school of magic, astronomy class was painfully mundane, peering through telescopes, charting stars, memorizing constellations. No flying planets. No spell-casting comets. Just astronomy. By 9 p.m., Alex was thoroughly cross-eyed from squinting at the sky. He stumbled back to his dorm room and flopped onto the bed, exhausted. "I can't slack off," he grumbled, sitting up. "I still have to hit the library tonight." Wandless casting wouldn't learn itself, and Alex was under no illusion. Without a wand, most wizards were nothing but prey. Powerless. Vulnerable. He didn't plan to be anyone's prey. midnight. The common room was quiet. Alex cast a disillusionment charm on himself, careful to blend into the shadows, and slipped out into the hallway like a wraith. No one in sight. Good. The last thing he needed was to run into Filch or, even worse, that damned cat Mrs. Norris. The two of them patrolled the castle at night like ghosts with grudges, always sniffing out mischief and rule breakers. Alex crept through the corridors, ears sharp, every step calculated. When he reached the library, he exhaled with relief. The book from earlier was still there, untouched. He grabbed it, paused, then turned toward the restricted section. Yes, he knew it was off limits. But the restricted section was deeper, quieter, easier to hide in. And if anyone came snooping, he could vanish before they ever knew he was there. He settled in. Lighting his wand just enough to see, he propped it nearby and began to read. The material was exactly what he needed. Ancient runes weren't just an alphabet. Each symbol hummed with power, its structure and intention shaping how magic could be formed, focused, and unleashed. Some runes were so complex they could fill an entire book just to define them. This was what he had been looking for, real knowledge. Not schoolhouse memorization. Power through understanding. But just as he was about to flip another page, a faint sound snapped him out of his trance. Voices. He tilted his head, listening. "Move it, George. If Filch catches us, I'm blaming you for the rest of the year." "Oh, please, Fred. I was setting up the dung bomb trap." "You're just mad I finished mine first." Laughter echoed faintly down the corridor. Alex blinked, then groaned silently. Oh no! The Weasley twins, two chaos incarnate in red hair and school robes, were charging straight toward the library. And from the distant shouting behind them, they'd brought an uninvited guest. "I know it's you two. Don't think you can hide. One whole term of detention if I catch you." Filch. Bloody hell! Alex resisted the urge to slam his head into the bookshelf. He had planned this night down to the detail. Quiet. Secluded. Productive. And now two madmen had led the devil himself straight into his study hall. Still, he had to admit the twins didn't need help. 3 years now, they'd been playing this game with Filch for long enough to turn it into a sport. So instead of fleeing, Alex did the only reasonable thing left to do. He put his wand away, tucked himself deeper into the shadows of the restricted section, and got comfortable. He might not finish reading tonight. But at least, he could enjoy the show. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 13, A Midnight Prank and the Beast Below. As expected, the Weasley twins were more cunning than Filch had anticipated. With a few crumbs and a smirk, they had lured Mrs. Norris off their trail and led Filch chasing ghosts down the wrong corridor. Watching from the shadows, Alex Gunter couldn't help but grin. In his past life, he'd always been entertained by the twins on-screen Hogwarts-crowned prank kings, always causing chaos in the most spectacular ways. But he also remembered how it ended. Fred died. George was left alone, half of a whole. It had felt unfair then, and it still did now. Still, tonight wasn't a night for melancholy. Tonight was a night for payback. After all, it was their fault his perfect nighttime research had been interrupted. They'd brought the storm to his doorstep. As the twins skipped carelessly ahead, blissfully unaware of what was coming, Alex's eyes narrowed with mischief. He raised his wand silently. With a sharp clatter, the helmet of a nearby suit of armor crashed to the ground, echoing thunderously through the empty corridor. Bang! The twins skidded to a halt like startled cats, spinning to see the cause of the noise only to find a lonely, empty helmet resting innocently on the floor. But behind them, echoing through the halls, came Filch's furious howling and Mrs. Norris' scratching meow. "Oi, I know it's you two. Don't think you can hide. I'll have you in detention for the entire term." The twins didn't wait to investigate. They bolted for the nearest staircase, scrambling up toward the fourth floor. Alex bit back laughter, following silently with footsteps like a whisper. But just as he was about to round the corner, a voice interrupted the chase. "Ha, students out of bed? My favorite kind." It was Peeves. Peeves the poltergeist had been floating around, bored and irritated, looking for trouble. And then, like a gift from the Chaos Gods, the Weasley twins practically ran into his face. "Ho ho! What have we here? The little Weasley pests!" He grinned wide and swooped down gleefully. "I could let you go, if you admit something. Say it loud and proud, Peeves the Great is Hogwarts' true prank king." Fred and George exchanged glances. Fred smiled innocently. "Oh, you mean it, Peevesy. Hogwarts' one and only mischief monarch." George added sweetly. And then, like synchronized devils, they both shouted, "That's clearly us!" They sprinted off in a fit of laughter, leaving Peeves in a fit of rage. From the shadows, Alex lost it. A quiet chuckle escaped before he could stop himself. "Who's there?" Peeves barked, spinning in the air, eyes darting around. Someone had laughed. Someone was watching. But Alex was already crouched low, hidden well. He spotted some chalk sticks lying nearby, probably Peeves' ammunition for the next student unlucky enough to pass beneath him. Alex smiled. "What a wayside!" One by one, the chalk pieces launched from the floor like magical missiles, pelting Peeves from every direction. "Ack! What the?" Peeves howled in outrage and scrambled away, heading in the opposite direction of the twins, vanishing into the dark. Now able to breathe, Alex turned toward the hallway the twins had taken. Something about this corridor stirred his memory. Fourth floor. Right wing. Wait. His eyes widened. This is where Dumbledore specifically told students not to go. The forbidden corridor. The one guarding the trapdoor. The first challenge of the Sorcerer's Stone. And the twins were heading straight into it. Damn it! Without wasting another second, Alex muttered a feather-light charm on his legs and sprinted after them. Sure enough, just around the bend, Fred and George were standing before a dusty old door, their wands raised like explorers about to uncover buried treasure. "Alohomora!" Fred intoned. The door creaked open. Alex winced. Dumbledore really didn't put a locking charm on that? Was he hoping Potter would get in? The twins darted inside. Alex groaned, ran in after them. And stopped. Lying atop a massive trapdoor, nearly blending into the darkness, was an enormous three-headed dog. Its heads rested on its massive paws, all snoring gently. And the stench. Dear Merlin, the stench! Alex gagged and held his breath. The thing smelled like raw meat and death and unwashed fur, a biological weapon if he'd ever inhaled one. One of the twins, Fred, maybe? Wasn't so lucky. Ugh, what's that smell? The moment the words left his mouth, all 3 dog heads snapped open. 6 eyes blazed with primal hunger. 2 heads turned toward the twins. 1 turned toward Alex. The illusion charm didn't cover scent. Crap! The middle head snarled and lunged. The twins raised their wands in a panic, both shouting defensive spells. Shimmering barriers flickered between them and the beast, but their magic wasn't nearly strong enough. The dog barely stumbled. It shook off the spells like raindrops and charged again. Alex had no choice. Dropping the illusion, he aimed high. Depulso. A red flash burst from his wand, slamming into the creature like a freight train. Crash! The dog yelped and was thrown backward, slamming into the stone wall with a sickening thud. The twins blinked, stunned. Alex didn't give them time to ask questions. Quick! Music! Sing something! Sing that ridiculous song you did at the sorting. Fred and George looked at each other, confused but trusting. Together, they launched into their own twisted version of the Hogwarts school anthem, the funereal dirge rendition they'd crooned during the feast. Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hoggy-Warty Hogwarts. The triple-headed monstrosity blinked once. Twice. Then slowly, with a final low growl, each head drooped again, lulled into magical slumber. Alex exhaled, heart still thundering. That had been way too close. Beside him, the twins were still singing, slightly off-key and thoroughly rattled. But alive. And Alex? Alex was already planning. He had a lot to think about. Not just about the trapdoor and what lay beneath it, but about what Dumbledore wasn't telling them. Whatever secret the old wizard was hiding, Alex had just stumbled into its shadow. And he wasn't going to stop now. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 14, Nightly Escapades and Brewing Trouble. Alex's scalp tingled. Seriously? Even now, these two had time for jokes? But thankfully, the 3-headed dog wasn't particularly discerning in taste or musical preference. The moment the bizarre melody reached its ears, it slumped back onto the trapdoor and promptly dozed off. Alex gave the twins a sharp look and gestured for them to quietly back out of the room. Together, they tiptoed out and gently shut the door behind them. Alex waved his wand, casting a locking charm for good measure. Only then did he finally let out a breath. Turning around, he was startled to find Fred and George Weasley staring at him with unconcealed curiosity. Before he could speak, the twins exchanged a glance and then, without warning, each slung an arm over his shoulders. "Dear Master Gaunt! Thank you for the daring rescue," said one with a dramatic bow. "I'm Fred, and this is my brother George." "Idiot! I'm the older brother." George immediately interrupted, jabbing a finger at his twin. Alex raised an eyebrow at the ridiculous title. Master Gaunt? Was this how they thanked their saviors? He decided to play along. "Dear Lords Weasley," Alex said gravely, "I was sent by none other than Professor Dumbledore himself to guard you from your own idiocy. You may call me, the Protector." Fred blinked. George's smile froze. "Wait, really? Dumbledore sent you?" Fred asked, slightly uneasy. "Did he know we were sneaking out?" "Of course not," Alex rolled his eyes. "I was out on a little stroll myself when you two dragged Filch to the library." "Oh." The twins exhaled together, realization dawning. "So that noise was your doing?" they asked in perfect sync. Alex shrugged. "I was reading in peace. Then came 2 howling hyenas and 1 very angry cat." George leaned in, eyes twinkling with mischief. "How come we didn't see you, though? Was it some kind of spell?" "Disillusionment charm," Alex replied simply. "I learned it by accident. If you're keen, you might find it, deep in the restricted section." The sparkle in their eyes turned to full-on fireworks. "Restricted section?" Fred grinned. Say no more, George whispered. We know the way. Alex yawned. All right, I'm calling it a night. Unless you noble Weasley lords have more chaos to unleash. Fred clapped his back. Sleep well, Protector. You really should have been a Gryffindor. George gave him a thumbs up. Way more fun than my brother Ron, honestly. Alex waved them off and didn't bother asking where they were headed, but wherever it was, it definitely wasn't Gryffindor Tower. At the entrance to Ravenclaw Tower, Alex tapped the bronze eagle knocker. It came to life, as expected. Its voice rang out smoothly, 2 fathers and 2 sons go hat shopping. They buy 3 hats. Why? Alex answered without missing a beat. It was grandfather, father, and son 3 generations. The door creaked open. Just as he stepped in, he looked up and froze. There, standing at the entrance to the girls' dormitories, was Cho. And she was staring right at him. Cho? He asked, startled. Alex, she blinked, equally surprised. They spoke in unison, then Alex quickly followed up. What are you doing here? I came to get my Quidditch training manual, she said, a bit dazed. Then, after a pause, her brow furrowed. But what about you? Why are you just coming back now? Faced with her sharp gaze, Alex gave up on lying. He recounted everything from his trip to the library, to how he got tangled up with the twins, and eventually, the room with the 3-headed dog. When he told her about pranking Fred and George with the crashing armor, Cho laughed so hard she almost fell over. But when he described the monstrous dog, her face turned tense, eyes wide. She only relaxed once he explained how the beast could be lulled to sleep with music. That's so cool, Alex, she practically beamed. You've only been here 2 days and you've already gone on a night adventure. I've been here for over a year and never dared. She was practically bouncing now. Next time you sneak out, take me with you. Alex stared at her, stunned. This calm, composed, seemingly quiet girl, was this her real side? But then again, she was Ravenclaw's future seeker. Of course she had fire in her blood. He reached over, gently ruffling her hair. All right. But only when it's actually fun. Tonight was just me reading in the dark. Boring stuff. Cho smiled sweetly, accepting his answer. They chatted a little longer, then both headed off to sleep. The next morning, Alex joined the other Ravenclaws on their way to the Dungeons for Potions class. Along the way, they passed the Gryffindor students heading the same way. Harry gave him a friendly nod, but didn't linger. His dorm mates quickly pulled him along. Thanks to what must have been a butterfly effect caused by his arrival, this year's Hufflepuff intake was unusually large. So much so that Hogwarts had decided to separate them into their own classes, while Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin would attend together. Which meant potions with Snape and the Slytherins. Great! Alex suddenly remembered. System, check-in. Ding! Congratulations, host! You've received Advanced Potions Knowledge, Purple Tier. His eyebrows lifted. That's some rare loot. With this and the earlier boost he got, he probably had the skill level of a top 4th-year student in potions. Perfect timing. After humiliating Snape during the sorting, the man was bound to come after him in class today. And now? Let him come. Alex cracked his knuckles. Thank you, dear system. Truly, you're the son I never had. And today? Today, Daddy's cooking. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 15, The Potion Master's Duel. At exactly 9 o'clock, the classroom door opened with a slow, deliberate creak and in swept Professor Severus Snape, draped in his usual billowing black robes. The fabric rippled behind him like a dark cloud as he crossed the dungeon floor, every step radiating an authority sharp enough to silence the chatter of 3 houses at once. Alex Gaunt couldn't help but wonder if this was the same robe Snape had worn when he'd visited his home before term started. Or maybe, the man just owned a wardrobe full of identical black ones. Snape didn't speak as he passed the students, the faint click of his boots echoing off the stone walls. He reached the desk, set down a roll of parchment, and let his cold, dark eyes sweep across the room. They lingered on Alex for 3 long seconds. Then on Harry Potter for 5. Without a word, Snape unfurled the roll and began to take attendance. His voice was low, calm, and somehow cutting like silk pulled taut over a blade. Each name rolled off his tongue with clinical detachment, every syllable laced with a hint of disdain. When he reached Gaunt, he paused again. His eyes met Alex's, unreadable yet sharp enough to pin him in place. Alex didn't flinch. He simply held Snape's gaze, his expression neutral, maybe even a little apologetic. Because truth be told, he had felt bad. Snape had gone out of his way to guide him during orientation, clearly expecting him to join Slytherin. Then Alex had gone and chosen Ravenclaw instead. It wasn't Snape he disliked. It was Slytherin's suffocating culture of arrogance and ambition. Snape seemed to catch something in his eyes, some wordless apology, or maybe pity. His lip twitched slightly before he looked away, continuing the roll call. Then came, Potter, Harry. Snape's voice lingered on the name, slow and heavy. "Oh, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." A snicker came from the Slytherin side. Alex turned just in time to see Draco Malfoy smirking between his 2 ever-loyal shadows, Crabbe and Goyle. Draco caught Alex's look and responded with a haughty glare. Alex didn't bother. Let Potter deal with his soulmate-level rivalry. He had zero interest in baby drama. Harry, however, shifted uncomfortably under Snape's gaze. He didn't yet know it, but this was only the beginning of his misery. Snape, ignoring the whispers and laughter, finally addressed the room. "You are here," he began, "to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making. As there will be little foolish wand-waving in this class, many of you will hardly believe this is magic." His voice grew softer, more deliberate. The classroom fell silent under its spell. "I do not expect you to truly understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, ensnaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even put a stopper in death if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach." For a moment, the words hung in the air, poetic, dangerous, captivating. Then, with the abruptness of a whip crack, Snape turned his gaze toward Harry. "Potter. Tell me, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry froze. Asphodel? Wormwood? Was that even English? His face went blank, and he stared helplessly back. Hermione's hand shot into the air like an arrow, but Snape didn't even glance her way. Alex, watching the entire scene unfold, couldn't help but smirk. So it begins, he thought. The eternal dance between Snape and Harry, half hatred, half haunting grief. Because Alex knew the hidden meaning behind those words. In the language of flowers, asphodel meant "my regrets follow you to the grave." And Snape, standing there, staring at Lily's eyes on James Potter's face, it was impossible to imagine what that did to him. Was it anger? Guilt? The memory of love lost and a promise broken? Alex felt a flicker of sympathy. Snape, misinterpreting the look, suddenly stiffened. Something about that gentle pity, as if Alex were silently saying "poor thing," made his jaw tighten. His eyes flashed coldly. "Mr. Gaunt," he said, his tone dripping with frost. "Perhaps you can enlighten the class." Alex blinked. Fantastic. From spectator to target. But he quickly composed himself. "If you add powdered asphodel root to wormwood infusion, you create the draught of living death, a powerful sleeping potion. Bezoars are found in the stomachs of cows, and aconite, also known as monkshood or wolfsbane, are the same plant. He said it all in one confident breath and even smiled politely at the professor. For a moment, Snape forgot to breathe. Not only had this boy answered everything, but he'd done it perfectly. And worse, he smiled. "Tell me, then," Snape said, voice dropping low, "if I were brewing a vitality potion, how would I prepare dried figs?" "Peel them," Alex answered smoothly. "And what use has powdered moonstone?" "It's used in the draught of peace after being ground finely. The difference between the draught of dreamless sleep and the draught of living death. The former induces hallucinations and mental instability. The latter is pure, complete stasis. You might consider comparing the first to a mortentia, Professor." A stunned silence filled the dungeon. Every other first year sat frozen, their quills forgotten, their expressions lost between awe and confusion. What language are they speaking? Even Hermione's jaw had dropped slightly. Snape inhaled sharply through his nose and straightened his robes. "Impressive, Mr. Gaunt," he said with a thin smile. "The Gaunt family's blood runs strong indeed. Of course, these are not topics suitable for first years. Yet you seem ever eager to flaunt what you know." Alex resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "You asked me." Snape, unwilling to leave empty-handed, turned his fury elsewhere. "Did you hear that, Potter?" he sneered. "Not every new student is as ignorant and foolish as you." Harry flushed. "But I—" "Silence. 1 point from Gryffindor for your arrogance." Snape's gaze flicked back toward Alex. "And 1 point to Ravenclaw." A heartbeat later, he added, "Forgetting your manners costs 2 points. Next time, say yes, Professor." Alex pressed his lips together. No point arguing. The man was baiting him, and he wasn't about to take it. The rest of the class sat petrified. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Snape scanned them all with eyes like cold oil. "What are you staring at? Is the answer written on my face? Write it down." He slammed his hands onto the desk, voice cutting like a whip. "You are without question the worst batch of students I've ever had." And with that, the dungeon filled once again with the frantic scratching of quills, and the quiet, knowing smile of one Ravenclaw who'd just survived a duel with the bat of the dungeons and lived to tell the tale. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 16, Whispers in the Dungeons. The moment Snape finished his harrowing introduction to potions class, he began pairing students into partners and did so with a strategic cruelty that only he could master. To ensure Hermione wouldn't have the chance to help Harry, he made sure to place her far across the classroom, right next to Alex Gaunt. Hermione's usual partner, the shy Ravenclaw boy Malcolm Corner, was instead sent to sit with Lavender Brown. Alex glanced at the bushy-haired girl now seated beside him. Her hair was a wild, frizzy mess, but it didn't hide the sharp lines of her young face. Though the slightly large front teeth threw off her symmetry a little, it gave her a sort of unique charm. Alex mused dryly, nodding politely at her before turning his focus to the ingredients laid out before him. "No, not ingredients. Potions materials." "Right. Hogwarts vocabulary." Hermione, however, looked like she had something to say. She hesitated for a few seconds, then finally leaned in and spoke. "Alex Gaunt, did you go to Garden Primary School?" she asked. Alex looked up, surprised. "Yeah. I graduated from Garden Primary." "How did you know?" Hermione let out a long breath, clearly relieved. She nodded eagerly. "I thought it was you. When I heard your name at the sorting ceremony, I had a hunch." She held out her hand, confidently and without reservation. "Hermione Granger. We were in the same school. I was in class 4. I used to hear all sorts of stories about you. You only showed up a few times a year, but every time you did perfect scores, all subjects." Alex blinked in realization. So we were classmates this whole time? No wonder she looked vaguely familiar. Then again, he'd barely attended primary school himself, too busy making money in his past life to bother with class. Had he known back then that Hermione Granger was a classmate, he might have. Ahem, no. That way lies prison. He took her hand and shook it with a slight smile. Nice to meet you properly, Miss Granger. Looks like fate really wanted us to work together. Just call me Hermione, she replied cheerfully. And don't think I've forgotten you always outscored me in primary. But now that we're at Hogwarts, it's payback time. I will beat you. The way she looked at him, fiery, full of resolve, made Alex chuckle. She was so serious, and honestly, kind of adorable. I wouldn't get too confident, he teased. And just then, if I were you, Mr. Gaunt, came Snape's cold, silken voice from behind them, I'd stop flirting and start adding the powdered viper fangs to your cauldron. Unless, of course, you want to poison your classmates. Hermione's face went scarlet. Alex, on the other hand, simply shrugged and tossed the powder into the cauldron without a hint of embarrassment. Snape scowled when his jab failed to land, and with the grace of a brooding bat, floated over to hover behind Harry like a curse waiting to be cast. An hour later, the class was dismissed, and a wave of miserable, exhausted students poured out of the dungeon. Most looked like they'd survived a war. Especially Harry, who dragged himself forward with glassy eyes and a soul that looked halfway to the afterlife. He'd already cost Gryffindor 5 points for a botched stirring technique and was starting to resemble a first-year veteran of trauma. Alex, however, lingered behind. He wasn't particularly interested in earning extra points, he just wanted to have a word with Snape. The constant scrutiny was getting annoying. Snape didn't even look at him. Mr. Gaunt, he said icily, if you're hoping to stay after class so I'll give you detention, you're wasting your time. Get out. There it is, Alex thought. The full Snape flavor. I'd like to talk, Professor, Alex said, not backing down. Snape turned to him, silent, eyes like still water, too dark, too deep, too difficult to read. Alex met his gaze and began plainly. I apologize, Professor. About the sorting. I know it wasn't what you expected. But, you saw it yourself. The sorting hat didn't exactly wait for me to negotiate. He shrugged lightly. You said it yourself, I'm from the Gaunt family, yes, but I'm also a half-blood. And from everything I've heard, Slytherin isn't exactly welcoming to someone like me. I didn't choose Ravenclaw to insult you. I chose it because it's the best fit. For me and honestly, probably for the rest of your students too. He waited. Snape didn't speak. He just looked. The room fell utterly still. Then, after a long silence, the potions master finally replied. Some matters, Mr. Gaunt, I can let go. But not everything is within my control. He paused. Students, especially those not in my house, are their own masters. I cannot guard you from their idiocy. Alex let out a breath of relief. That was as good as he could hope for. Understood, Professor. I don't care about their opinions. Only yours. If we're clear, I'll take my leave. He bowed slightly, turned, and walked away. Snape didn't stop him. He just stood there, watching. And when Alex finally vanished beyond the classroom door, the professor whispered softly to no one. If I had made a different choice, if I had stood my ground like that boy, Lily, would we have had a different ending too? Two silent tears shimmered in the corners of his eyes. Alex didn't know any of this. Because the moment he left the classroom, Fred and George Weasley ambushed him in the hallway. Well, if it isn't our dear Mr. Gaunt. Good day to you, sir. Both twins gave him flamboyant bows. Alex rolled his eyes. What now? Fred threw an arm around his shoulder, all smiles. Tonight. midnight. Hogwarts Secret Night Tour. 4th floor, right side corridor. Be there or be square. Alex raised a brow. Now what are these two planning? Still, he had nothing better to do. And something about their energy was contagious. All right, he agreed. I'll come. The twins cheered and bounded away like happy foxes with a new prank in mind. Alex, meanwhile, headed to the Great Hall and shoved down a few mouthfuls of lunch. He was in a rush. History of Magic was next. And History of Magic was a living death. The moment Professor Binns, an actual ghost, started speaking, the classroom transformed into a sensory void. His monotone droned on, a never-ending stream of dry facts delivered with all the charisma of wet toast. Within 10 minutes, Alex passed out on his desk. Across the room, Hermione shot him a scandalized look that could have turned a basilisk to stone. Meanwhile, in the headmaster's office on the 8th floor, Albus Dumbledore and Severus Snape sat in solemn conversation. And the topic? Alex Gaunt. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 17, The Headmaster's Calculations. High on the 8th floor of Hogwarts, the headmaster's office gleamed in warm afternoon light. It was a wide, circular room filled with the scent of parchment and phoenix feathers. Portraits of former headmasters lined the walls, pretending to nap but occasionally cracking an eye open to eavesdrop, proof that even in death, gossip was alive and well at Hogwarts. Behind a heavy oak desk sat Albus Dumbledore, his half-moon spectacles glinting with mischief. On a tall stool nearby rested a shabby, tattered old hat, the Sorting Hat itself, silent and still. Across from him sat Professor Severus Snape, his expression as sharp and unreadable as ever. "Ah, Severus," Dumbledore began cheerfully, "would you care for some refreshments? Perhaps a lemon sherbet? A toffee finger? Or a small pile of—" He peered at a dish. "Cockroach clusters." Snape's brow twitched. "No, thank you, Headmaster," he replied flatly. "I came to discuss a matter concerning Alex Gaunt." Dumbledore's smile faded, though a faint trace of amusement remained at the corner of his mouth. He set down the book in his hands, interlaced his fingers, and regarded Snape with quiet interest. "Then by all means, Severus," he said softly. "Tell me, what is your assessment of young Mr. Gaunt?" Snape's tone was as measured as ever. Calm. Decisive. Exceptionally talented. He knows precisely what he wants and how to get it. He paused. Then, with a faint curl of his lip, added dryly, "Also, somewhat of a flirt." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled behind his lenses. "Oh? I must admit, I didn't expect such high praise from you." The final remark included. Snape ignored the jab. "That is my honest evaluation. I have no interest in wasting time disliking a first year. I have enough work as it is." Dumbledore tilted his head, the light in his eyes growing brighter. "And yet, I recall thinking you might hold a touch of resentment after the sorting." "You surprise me, Severus." Snape's voice was as cold as ever. "His name may be Gaunt, but his heart is not that of a Dark Lord. A future Dark Lord does not spend his first week flirting with girls and charming half the school. He is ambitious, yes, but not twisted." The ghost of a smile flickered over Dumbledore's lips. "Oh, Severus. I think you misunderstand me. My interest in Mr. Gaunt is not born of fear, only curiosity." He leaned back in his chair, eyes gleaming with that peculiar mix of warmth and cunning that only Dumbledore possessed. "You see," he continued, "his surname alone is bound to draw attention. And as you know, Voldemort's return is inevitable. In the darker corners of magic, bloodlines are often valuable commodities." Snape's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Dumbledore went on. "Tom Riddle was fascinated by ancestry and the power of lineage. Even I must admit his understanding of magical bloodlines was extraordinary." He folded his hands again. That is why I asked you to keep an eye on young Gaunt, not as a warden, but as a guide. He'll need one. Snape didn't respond, though his silence said enough. Dumbledore smiled faintly, as if sensing his thoughts. I may have done a little research myself, over the summer, he added lightly. Snape's eyes narrowed. Of course you did. Dumbledore winked, unabashed. I visited the orphanage where he grew up. They spoke highly of him. Every year, he donates enough money to cover most of their expenses. Admirable, isn't it? Snape looked unimpressed, but Dumbledore wasn't done. And there's more, the headmaster said, voice lowering. He possesses a phoenix, a living phoenix. Such creatures gravitate only to hearts that shine. They bring courage where there is fear, light where there is darkness. He is not another Tom Riddle, Severus. Then why the concern? Snape asked curtly. Because I believe he will stand against what Tom represents, Dumbledore answered simply. And for that, he'll need guidance. Your guidance? Snape's expression soured instantly. The mere thought of tutoring a student who'd refused Slytherin was like being asked to drink undiluted doxy venom. But then he remembered his conversation with the boy after class, the calm reasoning, the lack of arrogance. For a moment, he hesitated. Dumbledore, of course, noticed. Of course, the headmaster said with a twinkle. Professor Flitwick also mentioned Mr. Gaunt's exceptional aptitude in charms. I imagine Ravenclaw will be proud to claim such a prodigy. No. Snape stood abruptly, cutting him off. His voice was firm, clipped. He may not wear green and silver, but his blood belongs to Slytherin. As head of that house, I have a duty to its founders' descendants whether they claim us or not. He straightened his robes, his tone colder than ever. I will handle it. And without waiting for dismissal, he turned and swept toward the door, his cloak flaring behind him like the wings of a shadow. The office door closed with a soft click. Dumbledore watched him go, the faintest curve playing at his lips. Ah, he murmured to himself, another interesting soul walks our halls. To move Severus Snape's heart now, that is no small feat. A low voice broke through his thoughts. One of the portraits on the wall, a stern-faced wizard with silver hair, had finally woken up. As a descendant of Slytherin, to choose Ravenclaw, the portrait thundered, is a disgrace to pure-blood heritage. Dumbledore chuckled. Headmaster Black, Mr. Gaunt isn't pure-blood at all. His mother carried the Gaunt line, yes, but his father was a Muggle. Headmaster Black's painted face twisted in outrage. He began muttering a string of words that made even a few ghosts gasp. Before Dumbledore could intervene, another portrait, a burly wizard with a short temper, stormed across his frame and punched Black square in the jaw. The wall erupted into chaos. Portraits shouted, cheered, and jeered. A few even tried to climb into the scuffle. Dumbledore didn't bat an eye. He simply steepled his fingers, eyes shining faintly behind the spectacles. Amid the cacophony, he whispered softly to himself, almost to Fawkes, almost to fate. Yes, another boy with power, potential, and a heart tested by choice. Let's hope this one walks a brighter path. Bonus chapter rewards. 300 collections equals +1 extra chapter. 500 collections equals +2 extra chapters. 800 collections equals +5 extra chapters. 1000 collections equals +10 extra chapters. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 18, Midnight Mischief and Pear-Shaped Secrets. Unknowingly, Alex Gaunt's first week at Hogwarts had already drawn to a close. His reputation as a prodigy had begun to spread like wildfire through the castle. On nearly every subject, he had earned Ravenclaw house points, every subject except history of magic. Professor Binns, being a ghost and lacking any real awareness of his students' lives, had apparently never heard of the concept of rewarding participation. Even Professor McGonagall had publicly invited Alex to join her prestigious Transfiguration Club, an honor she had never once extended to a first-year student. Suddenly, Alex's name was everywhere. The whispers followed him through hallways and staircases, not out of fear or scandal like they had for Harry Potter, but out of admiration. Ah! And not just for his brains. He was beautiful. It didn't matter whether he was answering a question or simply passing through the Great Hall. Girls turned their heads. Some shyly looked away when caught, blushing furiously. Others, bolder, tossed flirtatious winks his way. And Cho? Cho didn't take it lightly. Alex's poor waist had become the unfortunate victim of several jealous pinches. On Friday afternoon, Alex and Cho were curled up in the Ravenclaw common room, scribbling away at their assignments under the soft glow of enchanted lamps. Then, Alex suddenly remembered something. He looked up. Cho, George, and Fred invited me to meet them at midnight tomorrow. 4th floor corridor, right side. You wanna come? Cho blinked in surprise. Can I? Even though she asked, her eyes lit up with an unmistakable excitement. Alex smiled at her expression. Of course you can. I don't know what they're planning exactly, but it sounded like others were invited too. Should be fun. Cho practically beamed. Her homework was instantly forgotten, and she launched into speculation after speculation about what kind of wild mischief the twins had in mind. Alex didn't bother resisting. He set down his quill, leaned back, and let her babble on with that joyful sparkle in her voice. Homework could wait. Saturday night, just before midnight. Alex slipped quietly from his dormitory, heading back into the Ravenclaw common room. Cho was already there, perched on a blue velvet armchair with a book open in her lap, a history of the Irish Quidditch team. Though her eyes were on the pages, they kept flicking toward the boys' staircase. When Alex emerged, she practically lit up. He walked straight to her and gave her head a gentle pat. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's go. She smiled, warm and radiant, and set her book aside. As they stepped out of the room, Alex drew his wand. One hand in Cho's, he tapped her gently on the shoulder. She vanished. Completely. Only a shimmer of air where she stood. Cho gasped, waving her now invisible hand in front of her face. What spell is this? This is amazing. Invisibility charm, Alex replied. If you want, I can teach you sometime. But for now hold on tight. If you let go, I'll lose track of you. Somewhere, Fred and George Weasley would be screaming in protest. We had to sneak around like rats to learn those spells, and now you're just offering her lessons. But if Alex had been there to hear it, he wouldn't have cared in the slightest. They weren't soft, lovely girls with warm hands and starry eyes. They could go write a book about it. The two crept down the stairs, hand in hand, and made their way to the 4th floor corridor. Fred and George were already waiting in the shadows, whispering to each other. Beside them stood a tall black boy with a charming grin and a bag slung over his shoulder. Alex dispelled the invisibility charm with a flick of his wand. George. Fred. All three heads turned. Fred, or was it George, let out a loud, theatrical gasp. Is nothing sacred anymore? Even for a midnight adventure, the great Mr. Gaunt brings a lady upon his arm. Cho flushed scarlet. Everyone knew she and Alex were together by now, but hearing it teased aloud still made her shy. Alex rolled his eyes and gave one of the twins a light punch in the shoulder. This is Cho, my girlfriend. Now, are you gonna introduce me to your friend or not? The boy stepped forward, flashing a broad grin and raising a hand in greeting. Lee Jordan. Fred and George's partner in crime. They've told me all about you, mate. That prank you pulled? Legendary. Haven't seen anyone get one over on them in ages. He gave Alex a thumbs up and a big toothed smile. Cho nearly doubled over trying to contain her giggles. Lee looked like the most adorably earnest prankster she'd ever seen. Alex chuckled too. He remembered Lee now, the spirited Quidditch commentator from the films, always shouting biased calls and getting scolded by McGonagall. "Just call me Alex," he said. Once introductions were out of the way, Alex asked, "So what's this all about? And Lee, what's in the bag?" The twins exchanged a sly glance. They leaned in close, eyes gleaming with mischief. "We're taking you to one of the most mysterious places in all of Hogwarts," Fred whispered. "Trust me, you're going to love it. As for the bag," George added, "you'll find out soon enough." Before Alex could ask more, they were off, dragging Lee along behind them. Alex and Cho trailed after, exchanging curious glances. They descended toward the lower levels. No sign of Filch or Mrs. Norris, thankfully. Eventually, they reached the dungeons. That's when it clicked. The kitchen. The twins stopped in front of a grand painting. It depicted a feast: roast meats, steaming pies, and bowls of fruit. In the center of the spread sat a silver bowl piled high with fruit. George stepped up and scratched the surface of a particularly plump green pear. The pear squirmed. It giggled. And then poof, it morphed into a doorknob. He gave it a twist. The portrait swung open. They stepped inside. The Hogwarts kitchens were enormous, nearly identical in size and shape to the great hall above. Stone walls rose up to a high arched ceiling, and shelves of copper pans and silver dishes lined the walls. Over 100 house elves darted about, busy with nighttime cleaning and preparations. One elf approached them at once, dressed in a spotless tea towel and bowing deeply. "Good evening to the Honourable Weasley sirs and their esteemed guests. I am Ningen. How may I be of service this evening?" Clearly, the twins were regular visitors. Fred grinned. "Evening, Ningen. We'll take some dinner leftovers, a few desserts, and do a pot of tea. Make that strong. And don't forget the cups." The elf bowed again and scurried off. Alex turned to the others, still a little stunned. "I never imagined this was what you had in mind." George chuckled. "This is just the beginning, my friend. Welcome to Hogwarts, the right way. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 19, Midnight Revelry in an Abandoned Classroom. After leaving the kitchen, Cho was still in a bit of a daze. It wasn't until they arrived at an abandoned classroom on the second floor that she finally came back to her senses. "I had no idea Hogwarts had so many house elves in the kitchen," she said softly, still marveling. Though she was already in her second year, Cho had genuinely never thought about who actually prepared all the meals at Hogwarts. It just appeared. Alex nodded in agreement. He had known about the elves from the start, but even he had been odd seeing over 100 of them bustling about together, cooking and cleaning in perfect harmony. It was a different kind of magic altogether. Inside the classroom, Fred, George, and Lee Jordan expertly unloaded the food onto a dusty old desk they had turned into a makeshift banquet table. Roast lamb, crispy chicken, fried sausages, steaming Cornish pasties, rich Yorkshire puddings, creamy pumpkin pies, a thick, fragrant stew. And then came Lee, grinning as he opened up the bag he'd been carrying. Inside were several glass bottles, each filled with a warm, golden liquid. "What's that?" Cho asked curiously, eyeing the bottles. "Butterbeer," the twins announced proudly, puffing out their chests. "You actually bought this? They sell it to underage students?" she asked, half skeptical. Lee shrugged nonchalantly. "With this face?" The lady at the Three Broomsticks didn't even ask. Just handed it right over. Pfft! Cho burst into laughter. Honestly, Lee did look older, a combination of height, swagger, and the kind of face that made age a mystery. Alex chuckled too as he surveyed the spread before him. At this hour, well past midnight, it had been 5 or 6 hours since dinner. His stomach growled in agreement. Still, before he could dive in, he gave Cho a little warning. Don't drink too much of that, he said, nodding toward the butterbeer. Cho wrinkled her nose and nodded. Got it. George pulled a stool over, placed one foot on it like a pirate captain, and raised his bottle high. A toast. To the newest recruits of the Hogwarts Midnight Wanderers. Everyone followed suit, clinking their bottles together with a hearty cheers. Alex took a sip and was surprised. Smooth, lightly sweet, and with only the faintest hint of alcohol. It was, actually really good. Cho clearly agreed. She took a few curious sips in quick succession, delight lighting up her face. Alex quickly reached over and eased the bottle from her hand before she got too far ahead. Pace yourself, he said with a grin. The night's just started. Cho pouted playfully. But it's so good. I've always wanted to try it. But my parents kept telling me I wasn't old enough. 2 drinks in, her cheeks were already tinted a warm pink. Excitement danced in her eyes. For someone who had always followed the rules, tonight was a whirlwind. Breaking curfew, sneaking into the kitchens, drinking butterbeer, she'd already shattered at least 10 school rules. Alex couldn't help but find her adorably rebellious. Well then, he said gently, if you like it, I'll bring you more next time. Ooh! The twins and Lee instantly started hooting and hollering, adding to the chaos. Fred elbowed Alex. If you ever want to sneak off to Hogsmeade, mate, we know all the hidden passages. George nodded solemnly. Consider it an official invitation. Alex grinned. Deal. From that point on, conversation died down. The group fell into the most sacred of teenage traditions, eating like starved wolves. Bottles clinked, forks scraped, and laughter filled the dusty room. Eventually, their feast lay vanquished. Plates were empty. Bellies full. Alex, feeling sluggish, flicked his wand. Oxio chairs. Several mismatched chairs zoomed across the room. Then with another quick spell, the wooden chairs elongated and curved, transforming smoothly into cushioned recliners. Everyone stared. Now that's a trick! George cried, flopping down with exaggerated relief. Fred gave a slow, dramatic thumbs up. Second years can't even transfigure paperweights yet. And here you are, giving us magical furniture. Cho leaned into Alex's side, her voice full of admiration. Your transfiguration is amazing. We won't even learn large object transformations until later this year. Seriously, said Lee, kicking his feet up. It's like having our own personal spell butler. Alex waved it off with a modest shrug, gently lacing his fingers through Cho's as the two of them rocked gently in their chairs. The classroom filled with the rhythmic creak 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 of swaying chairs. Moments passed in sleepy silence. Then Alex stretched and glanced toward the twins. Hey, don't you guys have 2 more brothers at Hogwarts? Why didn't they come? Fred cackled. You mean Percy and Ronnie Ekins? George leaned over dramatically. If Prefect Percy even knew what we did tonight, we'd get a howler from Mum before breakfast. Fred nodded. And Ronnie's the family golden boy. Too sweet, too innocent. We can't go dragging him into the underworld like this. Everyone burst out laughing. Alex nodded knowingly. Percy's rule-loving, career-climbing attitude never sat right with him. Honestly, he belonged in Slytherin more than Gryffindor. Probably the Weasley name had swayed the Sorting Hat's final call. From there, the twins launched into tale after tale, pranks pulled, teachers baffled, secret passageways found. Even Lee added a few of his own. Alex and Cho listened with rapt attention, completely enchanted. These weren't just stories, they were a roadmap to turning Hogwarts into a playground. Eventually, the hour grew late. Blinking sleepily, the group began to clean up. Alex used a few quick spells to return everything to how it had been, erasing all traces of their feast. Then, before parting ways, Alex cast invisibility charms on the twins and Lee to keep them safe from Filch and his ever-creeping cat. The group separated quietly, slipping back to their common rooms under cover of shadow and spell work. The night had been short, but perfect, the kind of memory that would linger, golden and warm, long after the candles burned out. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 20, The Skybound Surprises of First Flight. Watching the twins and Lee disappear down the corridor, Alex turned to Cho and said with a smile, "Let's head back too." Cho, flushed and glassy-eyed from the butterbeer, gave a soft nod. Her movements were sluggish, her gaze dreamy. She was clearly tipsy. Alex could only sigh and shake his head in helpless amusement. He stepped closer and gently wrapped an arm around her, pulling the soft, delicate girl into his embrace. Her warmth, the subtle fragrance of pumpkin spice lingering from their feast, it was dangerously intoxicating. "This isn't right. Not legal. Not yet. Wait a few more years," he chanted to himself internally, forcing restraint. They made their way back to the entrance of Ravenclaw Tower. Cho had sobered slightly during the walk, her senses gradually returning. But even then, she didn't pull away. Nestled comfortably in Alex's arms, she simply enjoyed the safety and warmth. "Thank you, Alex," she whispered. Then, summoning a burst of courage, she leaned forward and placed a soft kiss on his cheek, featherlight, barely a touch. And before Alex could respond, she darted toward the staircase leading to the girls' dormitory, her ears pink and her steps flustered. Alex stood frozen for a moment, dazed. He touched the spot on his cheek where she'd kissed him, murmuring, "Why run? I barely even felt that." With a soft chuckle, he made his way to his room, the lingering warmth on his face carrying him into peaceful dreams. Thursday afternoon. A wide expanse of grassy field stretched before the Hogwarts castle. Today was their very first flying lesson. Students from Ravenclaw, Slytherin, and Gryffindor were already gathered, buzzing with excitement and nerves. Those from wizarding families were boasting non-stop about their broom-riding escapades as kids. Slytherins, in particular, were being insufferable. Draco Malfoy was loudly recounting a story probably exaggerated about how he once dodged a Muggle helicopter on a broom. Then, predictably, he launched into complaints about how first-years weren't allowed to try out for the Quidditch team. While he bragged, he kept sneaking smug glances at Harry and at Alex, who was chatting with Hermione not far away, clearly pitying them for being broomless before Hogwarts. Alex, for his part, had zero interest in Malfoy's babble. He was focused on the anxious little witch in front of him. "Don't worry, Hermione," he said gently. "Neither Harry nor I have ever ridden a broom either. You're not alone. And most of the others are bluffing." Hermione looked pale, her curls slightly frizzed with stress. Harry had told him she'd been mumbling Quidditch facts from Quidditch through the ages all morning. Neville was nearby too, nodding vigorously at Hermione's rapid-fire recitations, hoping to absorb whatever might help. In one hand, he clutched a remembrall that was glowing faintly red, though he seemed to have forgotten that detail completely. At last, Madame Hooch arrived, her whistle sharp and commanding, followed by a floating line of battered school brooms. She strode over briskly, pointing at the stack with her wand. "Pick a broom," she instructed. Alex picked one up and grimaced. It looked ancient. The tail bristles were frayed, uneven, and partially falling out. Confidence? Suddenly optional. "All right, right hand over the broom, like this," Madame Hooch demonstrated. "And say, up. Up." Alex commanded with focus. The broom leapt into his hand without hesitation. Harry's did the same. But for others, chaos ensued. Hermione's broom twitched, rolled once, then ignored her completely. Malfoy's finally jerked upward, nearly smacking him in the nose. After some basic explanations on balance and posture, Madame Hooch gave the call. 3, 2, 1. Kick off. Alex pushed off the ground lightly. Immediately, he rose smoothly into the air, a natural. He quickly discovered that the broom obeyed his thoughts like an extension of his body. The blue-colored flight experience book he'd read earlier was clearly working wonders. But just as he was starting to enjoy himself, a scream tore through the air. Neville, in full panic mode, had kicked off far too hard. With a whoosh, he shot straight up at a 90-degree angle, spiraling into the sky. 20 feet off the ground and still rising. Then disaster struck. His hands slipped from the broom handle. Time seemed to slow as he began to fall, limbs flailing, eyes wide with terror. Madame Hooch whipped out her wand, trying to cast the levitation charm, but she was too far, too slow. The other students screamed. A few girls covered their eyes, already imagining the horrific crunch of impact. Wingardium Leviosa. The voice was clear, calm, and firm. Alex's wand glowed. The spell hit Neville mid-air, wrapping him in invisible force. His rapid descent slowed instantly, and with a graceful sweep of Alex's wand, Neville drifted down like a feather and landed safely in the grass. Stunned silence. Then cheers exploded. Merlin's beard, someone gasped. Even Madame Hooch rushed over, both relieved and horrified, helping Neville up. She checked him over thoroughly, then, still shaken, announced, "I'm taking him to the infirmary. But before that, Ravenclaw earns 10 points. Excellent spell work, Mr. Gaunt." With that, she and Neville disappeared toward the castle. As soon as she was gone, Draco started laughing loudly, mockingly at Neville's expense. Then he spotted something shiny on the grass. Neville's Remembrall. Grinning, he scooped it up. "Look what I've found." Malfoy smirked. "Let's play fetch. Longbottom can go and get it." Then, without warning, he mounted his broom and soared into the air, holding the Remembrall above his head like a trophy. "Come get it, Scarhead." Harry's jaw clenched. That was it. He kicked off the ground, launching into the sky in hot pursuit. Alex watched with amusement as Harry shot upward with natural grace, darting after Malfoy like a snitch-chasing seeker. His Quidditch star blood was clearly doing its job. So this is how he gets scouted for the team, Alex mused. Not by talent tests, but by spontaneous mid-air justice. He grinned, watching the two first-years twist and spin in the air, trading jabs and evasive maneuvers. But then... ah! A sudden scream pierced the air. Hermione! In her panic over Harry's impulsive flight, she'd forgotten she was still in launch position. She gasped, took a single nervous step forward, and her broom shot up beneath her. Like an arrow from a bowstring, she flew skyward completely unprepared. Alex stared in stunned silence. Here we go again. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 21, The Fall and the Catch. When Hermione suddenly shot skyward, all the young witches and wizards below cheered, thinking she was heroically rushing up to stop the duel between Harry and Draco. But then her scream pierced the air. Cheers faded into confusion. Whispers turned to worry. Something was wrong. Alex's eyes narrowed. These kids actually believe Hermione knows how to fly? He was already moving before the rest caught on. His legs clamped tightly around the broom, knees bent, and he kicked off with all his strength. The broom howled under the sudden acceleration, shooting upward in a streak as he raced toward the panicking Hermione. "Don't move, Hermione! Stay balanced!" Alex shouted against the wind as he closed the distance. But Hermione couldn't hear him, or if she did, panic drowned out his voice. Her white-knuckled fingers clung to the broom, her body stiff with fear. Then it happened. Her broom jerked violently. Something must have misfired, or maybe she nudged it by accident. Either way, it suddenly veered at full speed toward the Forbidden Forest. And she was slipping. Alex's heart pounded. He lowered his body flat against his broom. The old comet groaned beneath him, every bolt and twig trembling with the strain. But he didn't care. He pushed it harder. He saw her fingers go. Saw her body twist in the air. Saw her falling. He shot forward like a bullet. 2 meters above the ground. He caught her. His arms wrapped around her just in time. Her momentum drove them downwards, the broom shrieking under the combined weight, nearly breaking apart from the stress. The bristles scraped against the grass. Alex fought to level out, gripping with his knees, leaning back hard. They landed in a tumbling slide. The moment they touched ground, the broom split apart under them with a series of loud cracks. Gone. Completely wrecked. But Hermione, shaken, shocked, trembling, was safe. She stared up at him from his arms, mouth agape, frozen in disbelief. And then, all at once, the tension snapped. She burst into tears. Wah! It was the kind of cry that tore at the heart, raw, overwhelmed, and absolutely unrestrained. Merlin's beard. What in the name of Hogwarts do you think you're doing? That voice thundered across the field. Alex turned. Professor McGonagall was storming toward them, fury in every step. Behind her trailed a sulking Harry, his head hung low. Further behind, though still valiantly trying to catch up, was Professor Flitwick, panting like mad as his tiny legs pumped across the grass. Mr. Gaunt! Miss Granger! You too! McGonagall's words caught in her throat as she reached them and saw Hermione sobbing uncontrollably in Alex's arms. Her expression softened. Her lips parted, but no sound came. I'm sorry, Professor, Alex said calmly, not rising from his crouch. It wasn't Hermione's fault. She was trying to help. He quickly explained what had happened, emphasizing that Hermione had launched by accident, and that she hadn't meant to disobey orders. McGonagall's stern face wavered. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then sighed. Alex had just saved a student from a nasty fall, a student from her own house. It would be inappropriate to scold him, let alone punish Hermione. Mr. Gaunt, are you all right? Came a squeaky voice as Flitwick finally arrived, out of breath. Alex nodded with a smile. I'm fine, Professor. But Hermione, she could use some rest. He glanced down at the crying girl still buried against his chest. Professor McGonagall took a deep breath. Mr. Gaunt, please take Miss Granger to the hospital wing. And, thank you. 20 points to Ravenclaw. She turned her gaze on Harry. Potter. You're coming with me. Hermione was still sniffling, but she'd quieted down. Seeing her tear-stained face and trembling body, McGonagall made a decision. No point embarrassing her further. Let Alex handle it. Without waiting for permission, Alex shifted his grip and lifted Hermione into a princess carry, cradling her gently. She didn't resist. Inside the hospital wing, the room was quiet. Alex sat down on a low cot, Hermione still in his arms, her face buried in his robes. All right, Hermione, he said softly. It's just us now. You can let go. No response. Seriously. If you don't let go soon, my clothes are going to be soaked. At that, the little witch finally stirred. Slowly, she looked up. Her face was still streaked with tears, cheeks flushed a rosy red, eyes puffy and shining. She looked like a lost kitten that had just found shelter. A mess of misery and embarrassment, and absolutely, heartbreakingly adorable. Alex smiled. It's all over now. Just a fluke. With practice. I'm never flying again, she snapped. It was sudden and fierce, cutting off his attempt at reassurance. Alex blinked. Then chuckled. Okay. Okay. No flying. I get it. He wisely didn't argue. Pushing her now would only make it worse. So he stayed beside her, gently coaxing her, keeping his voice low and warm. Eventually, her breathing evened out, her eyelids drooped. The tears dried. And Hermione Granger, brilliant, bookish, stubborn Hermione finally fell asleep in his arms, safe and sound. After everything that had happened, Alex figured she'd earned it. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 22, The Rising Star of Ravenclaw. By the time Alex finally reached the entrance of the Ravenclaw common room, his body felt heavier than stone. The flight itself hadn't exhausted him physically. What truly drained him was the magical strain. Sustaining protective magic on a broomstick while forcing it to fly beyond its limits, it was no joke. Definitely need a long nap after this, he thought, yawning as he touched the eagle-shaped knocker. But as soon as he stepped into the common room, he knew something was off. Too quiet. Much too quiet. The moment he entered, every single Ravenclaw student looked up eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like they'd all been waiting for him. Alex froze. What the hell? And then, like a Quidditch goal set on fire, it exploded. That was amazing, Alex. A senior girl near the bookshelf was the first to speak. Her voice was quickly drowned by a tidal wave of chatter and cheers. You were incredible. You should definitely try out for the Quidditch team. I heard you saved a Gryffindor girl in midair. Was it true you caught her in your arms? The common room, usually filled with quiet readers and softly spoken debates, had turned into a den of excitement. Most of the Ravenclaws were girls and now they all looked like they were about to burst with questions. Alex stood rooted, blinking at the excited crowd. How did news spread this fast? Before he could say a word, a blur of black hair and familiar perfume launched itself into his arms. Alex! It was Cho. Her arms wrapped tightly around him as she pressed herself against his chest. Alex instinctively caught her. Are you okay? She asked breathlessly, her hands urgently checking him over for injuries. I'm fine, Alex murmured, gently running a hand through her hair, warmed by her worry. Not even a scratch. Only when she was sure he was unharmed did Cho breathe a sigh of relief. Then, with a glare that could kill, she pinched his waist hard. Ouch! That one definitely wasn't magical. Yet, he got it. She was jealous. Not of Hermione, per se, but of the fact that he'd pulled a heroic stunt for another girl. There was only so much a proud girlfriend could tolerate. Alex gave her an apologetic grin, trying to pass it off with charm. Cho, being the reasonable sort, didn't press it, especially not with so many eyes on them. She gave him one last pout before stepping back. Which, unfortunately, signaled to the rest of the crowd that it was open season on Alex Gaunt. Alex, how did you fly so fast on a comet? Wait, are you sure this was your first time riding a broom? They said you caught that Gryffindor girl like it was nothing. You must be super strong. Can I touch? Whoa! Alex yelped as a curious hand reached for his arm. Or was that his chest? This was getting out of hand. Thankfully, salvation came barreling through the crowd in the form of one Roger Davies, Ravenclaw Quidditch captain and hopeless romantic. Oi! Clear a path! Move, move! He shoved his way forward, eyes locking on Alex. Flitwick wants to see you in his office. Those words were a godsend. Sorry everyone! Alex shouted as he bolted toward the door. Gotta go. Professor's orders. Ask me later. The sea of Ravenclaws reluctantly parted. Alex didn't wait for them to change their minds. He slipped through and fled like a man escaping a stampede. He exhaled in relief the moment the common room door closed behind him. One more minute in there, and I'd have been devoured. Meanwhile, the story of the wild flying lesson was spreading like wildfire. Across Hogwarts, it was the talk of the day. First, Alex Gaunt used a perfect levitation charm to save Neville Longbottom. Then came the high-speed duel between Harry and Malfoy. And finally the dramatic, utterly cinematic moment where Alex soared after a falling Hermione and caught her in his arms. All of that in one flying class? The gossip practically fed itself. Gryffindor common room. I'm telling you, Harry dove from like 20 feet in the air, caught the remembrall inches from the ground, and just stopped like it was nothing. Ron was reenacting the scene with dramatic flourishes, clearly relishing the role of storyteller. Until he was rudely interrupted. "Okay, Ronnie Ekins," said George, slinging an arm around him. "You've sung Harry's praises enough times for the entire tower to know. Yeah, it's time to tell us the real story," Fred added from his other side. "What about Alex? How did he catch Hermione?" "Come on," said Angelina Johnson from nearby, eyes gleaming with interest. "Was it really that dramatic?" Ron grumbled, but under the pressure of two Weasley brothers physically leaning on him, he caved and retold Alex's mid-air rescue in full detail, even miming Hermione's scream for added effect. Hufflepuff common room. The Hufflepuffs, usually quiet and unbothered, were buzzing with admiration. To them, Alex wasn't just talented. He was brave. Selfless. The kind of person you could rely on. Risked his own neck for someone else, one boy murmured, shaking his head with respect. "That's real courage." "He'd fit right in here," someone else added, and the others nodded. Slytherin dungeon. The vibe in Slytherin was complicated. On one hand, many of the snakes still held grudges. Alex had humiliated them during the sorting, after all. And now, once again, he'd stolen the spotlight and even managed to upstage Malfoy. That didn't sit well with several of them. Plans for putting the Ravenclaw brat in his place were already being whispered in corners. On the other hand, a small faction of Slytherin girls had very different opinions. "He's really good at spells. And flying too. And he's got style. Did you see the way he caught that girl?" It was enough to split the common room into rival camps, those who wanted revenge, and those who were quietly swooning. Meanwhile, Alex had no idea just how much of a stir he'd caused. He was now standing outside Professor Flitwick's office, straightening his robe and knocking gently on the door. "Come in." He entered to find the familiar sight of the cozy, parchment-strewn room. Flitwick beamed at him from behind a stack of books. "Take a seat, Mr. Gaunt." Alex sat down, curious. "I must say, your performance today was outstanding," Flitwick said warmly. "Casting a levitation charm with such precision under pressure, mid-flight? That's remarkable." Alex gave a modest smile. "I just did what I could, Professor." The charms professor chuckled. "No need to be modest. You saved a life, and impressed quite a few people while you were at it." Then his tone shifted slightly. "Tell me, Mr. Gaunt, are you familiar with Quidditch?" Alex's eyebrows lifted. "Here it comes. I know the rules," he said carefully. "My girlfriend's a huge fan, so I've heard plenty. But I've never actually played." "Excellent," said Flitwick, clapping his hands. "That's more than enough. I wanted to ask, would you be interested in joining the Ravenclaw Quidditch team?" And there it was. Alex blinked. He hadn't expected things to escalate this quickly. But then again, why not? He'd saved a student, shown great flying instincts, and cast a complex charm under pressure. Just like Harry Potter. He was about to be offered the chance to soar. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 23, A Comet, a Kiss, and a Quidditch Dream. Alex wasn't even surprised when he heard Professor Flitwick's offer. Harry caught a ball and got pulled straight into Gryffindor's Quidditch team by Professor McGonagall. He caught a person. And not just anyone, Hermione Granger, mid-fall, in front of half the student body. If Harry could get a broom for that, Alex thought smugly, I'd better be getting a firebolt and a statue. More importantly, this might give him an excuse to spend more time with Cho. With her being a year above, their classes never lined up. But if they were both on the Quidditch team? He nodded at once. Of course, Professor. I'd love to. But is that allowed? I heard first years aren't permitted to join. Don't worry about that, Mr. Gaunt, Flitwick said with a mischievous twinkle. Leave those formalities to me. That was all Alex needed to hear. The tiny professor hopped off his chair and shuffled over to a locked trunk by the window. With a small flick of his wand, it popped open. He reached in and pulled out a long, carefully wrapped package. Alex blinked. Professor, what's this? A Nimbus 2000, Flitwick said with a fond smile. This year's newest model. One of my former students works at Nimbus. He sent it to me as a gift. I'd originally intended it for Roger Davies, but now I think it suits you far better. Alex nearly choked. McGonagall bought Harry a broom with her own money. But Flitwick just casually had one lying around from a student who worked as a broom designer? Typical Ravenclaw. Not many ancient purebloods in the house, but when it came to magical industries and research, Ravenclaws held down the core of the wizarding world. Always behind the scenes. Quiet, but powerful. No wonder Slytherin and Gryffindor were always at each other's throats. Ravenclaw just flew over the battlefield with a smirk. Without hesitation, Alex took the Nimbus 2000 into his arms, cradling it like it was his own child. Thank you, Professor. I'll take good care of it. When should I report in? Next Wednesday. That's when the team's holding tryouts. See Roger Davies, he'll help you find the right position. Alex nodded, bowed respectfully, and left the office with his brand new broom hugged tight to his chest. The second he stepped back into the common room, it was like déjà vu. A crowd of little eagles swarmed him again, their curiosity rekindled by the shiny package in his arms. Is that what I think it is? Is that a Nimbus 2000? He muttered a few polite answers, dodged more groping hands and awkward praise, and finally escaped into a quiet corner. Cho approached, her eyes already locked on the wrapped broom. What's that? She asked, tilting her head. Nimbus 2000, Alex said casually. Professor Flitwick gave it to you. Her jaw dropped. Yep. Said I'm joining the Quidditch team. Though my position hasn't been decided yet. Cho looked even more surprised now. I thought first years weren't allowed to join the team. Alex shrugged. Tell that to Harry. McGonagall just summoned him too. I bet she's doing the same thing over in Gryffindor. Oh. Tryouts are next Wednesday, he added. Are you joining too? Of course I am, she said proudly. My goal this year is to become Ravenclaw Seeker. Her eyes lit up with that familiar fiery confidence. Alex grinned. Well then, what are we waiting for? Let's go test this thing out. She blinked. Now. Why not? Classes are over for the day. Let's grab some lunch, then head out to the Black Lake. He reached for her hand. She took it without hesitation. After lunch, the two of them walked hand in hand to the lake, the breeze tugging at their robes and the sun dancing on the water. Then began their private training. Cho took to the Nimbus like a bird finally allowed to stretch its wings. She soared higher and faster than Alex had ever seen her fly. She twisted, spun, looped, and banked effortlessly, laughter echoing behind her in the wind. Watching her up there, so full of life and freedom, Alex made a quiet decision. This Christmas, he thought, I'm buying her one of these. The Nimbus Flitwick had given him was a gift, and it didn't feel right to regift it even to her. But come winter, he'd save every galleon he had and buy Cho her own broom. And not just any broom. The best. The week passed quickly, and with it came a growing sense of normalcy. First years settled into the rhythm of Hogwarts. They stopped getting lost as much. They started remembering passwords. And most importantly, homework started piling up. Alex, of course, was unfazed. He'd bullshitted his way through term papers in his last life. A little extra parchment? Please. He could do this in his sleep. In the library one afternoon, he spotted Harry and Ron desperately pleading with Hermione to let them copy her potions essay. Snape had assigned a full 3 feet of parchment single-spaced on the uses of dittany in restorative brews. Absolutely brutal. Still, Alex had his own priorities. He and Cho had already gone to Quidditch tryouts and both of them made the team. Cho, as expected, became Ravenclaw Seeker. Alex chose to be a beater. Beaters get to protect the Seeker, he'd said smugly. That means I get to keep you safe up in the sky. Cho had blushed bright red. And when he leaned in and whispered, "You just focus on that snitch, I'll take care of the rest," she gave him a shy, stunned look. And then kissed him. Just a soft, brief kiss. But enough to make the other team members gag loudly and retreat with exaggerated groans. "Oi! Take it off the pitch, you two." Too late. Alex was already flying high and it had nothing to do with the broom under him. Thank you for the 500 collection. An advance chapter will be released today. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. Chapter 24, Whispers, Brooms, and the Transfiguration Test. It didn't take long for news of Alex Gaunt joining the Ravenclaw Quidditch team to spread through all 4 houses. Gryffindor wasn't all that surprised after all, their own golden boy, Harry Potter, had just gotten onto the team himself. So what if another first year did the same? Hufflepuff, as always, kept to themselves. No big reaction there. But Slytherin, Slytherin. Draco Malfoy was especially sour. He huffed that if his head of house weren't such a stickler for school rules, he would have been on the team too. Word around the castle was that Draco had actually tried to tattle to Snape about the first years sneaking into the teams. Snape's response? A single cold glance. That was enough to send young Malfoy scampering back with his robes between his legs. Ravenclaw, on the other hand, practically exploded with excitement. Their Quidditch performance had been mediocre for the past few years, and now suddenly they had Alex Gaunt. The boy who could catch a falling girl from 20 feet in the air. The boy who cast levitation charms mid-flight like he was born for it. Surely, this was the year they'd take the Quidditch Cup. So much so, that a few upper-year girls took it upon themselves to form an actual cheer squad for Alex. It started with just a few Ravenclaw girls, then somehow, it picked up steam. Before long, girls from Gryffindor and even Hufflepuff were joining in. Roger Davies, Quidditch captain and resident ladies' man, was fuming with envy. He'd led the team for 2 years and not once had a cheer squad. But Alex Gaunt waltzes in, saves one girl, and suddenly he's a school heartthrob? Unbelievable. But Alex didn't really care about the fanfare. His schedule was packed tight. Every day after classes, he went to the library to study with Hermione. Ever since the flying class incident, she'd been acting strange, running off right after lessons, barely saying a word to him. But after about a week, she returned to normal. Smiling again. Talking again. Even joined his cheer squad, apparently. Girls were way too hard to figure out. Still, as long as Hermione was back to herself, Alex wasn't complaining. After all, that meant he could start borrowing her homework again. He had no shame. Those ridiculously long essays Snape assigned? Alex had no time to waste making them up. He'd take Hermione's work, tweak a few words here and there under the noble banner of editing, and submit it as his own. Hermione never suspected a thing. Why would she? Alex always aced his classes and had racked up over 100 house points already. He had the perfect cover. Most of his real focus was on ancient runes. That was where his passion and his power truly lay. He was making rapid progress, mastering elemental runes like fire, wind, and water. These weren't just scribbles on parchment he was beginning to cast with them. No wand. No incantations. Just the pure, primal magic of runes. Simple spells were now entirely wandless. And if he kept going at this rate, he might one day cast everything without a wand. When the time came to face Voldemort, he'd be ready. He'd spit runes in his face like a machine gun. Take that, Snake Man! Aside from the runes, there was also Quidditch. He and Cho trained together every evening. Alex tried offering her the Nimbus 2000 after all, he was a beater. He didn't need speed. She was a seeker. She did. But Cho gently refused. It's from Professor Flitwick, she said. It's yours, not mine. She loved her own broom a clean sweep 7 and didn't feel right borrowing his. Alex gave up after that. Let her keep her clean sweep. Once Christmas rolled around, he'd buy her a Nimbus of her own. That had been his plan anyway. Missing one match wouldn't hurt. By the time October rolled in, Hogwarts had fully settled into its rhythm. The homework was piling up fast. One afternoon in the library, Alex spotted Harry and Ron groveling to Hermione over a 3-foot-long essay Snape had assigned. Single-spaced. On Dittany's properties and healing potions. Alex chuckled. That was nothing. His past life had been filled with academic drudgery. If there was one thing he could do with his eyes closed, it was churning out garbage essays. He breezed through the assignments and still had time to train with Cho, master runes, and flirt his way to another stolen kiss now and then. They both made the team, by the way. Cho as Ravenclaw Seeker. Alex as Beater. I chose it so I can protect you, he'd told her with a wink. You just focus on the snitch. I'll handle everything else. Cho's blushing face was reward enough. Then, one Thursday at lunch, as Alex was cutting his steak beside Cho, a paper crane fluttered down from the air and landed neatly on his plate. He blinked. Another fan letter? No, this one was neat. Elegant. Official looking. Unfolding it, Alex read the delicate script. Mr. Gaunt. This term's first meeting of the Transfiguration Club will be held this Saturday afternoon in the staff lounge adjacent to my office. As this will be your first meeting, you will be required to complete a short demonstration to assess your current level. Professor McGonagall. Ah. So that's what it was. For a second, he thought some girl had found an overly dramatic way to send a confession letter. Cho peeked over his shoulder. What's that? He handed her the paper crane. Wow! The Transfiguration Club, she whispered. Only 2 6th years from Ravenclaw got in last year, and they barely made the cut. She sighed. I've never been good at transfiguration. Charms I'm fine with, but transforming things? Nope. It's not that hard, Alex said, entirely too smug. As long as you can turn something into an animal, even if it's just for show, that's good enough. Cho gave him a look. She was still struggling with changing one object into another. Animal transfigurations were miles away. Still, she let it slide. The first Quidditch match of the year was just around the corner, and she was staying late after every practice to train harder. She didn't have the time or energy to be jealous right now. Saturday came quickly. That afternoon, Alex walked confidently to the staff lounge beside McGonagall's office, ready for his first real taste of the Transfiguration Club. Thank you for the 500 collection. Access 30 chapters in advance on my Patreon, patreon.com/1fic. New chapter is coming soon. Write a review.